to you and said, hey, we want to be part of a union, or some of your writers said, hey, we want to support those people in, other departments, what would your reaction be?
Well, you know what my reaction would be? First off, my reaction. It's really important for us to kind of study and watch and follow what the issue, how it transpires now that it's out there in front of everybody. It's really become more of a conversation topic, and public interest, I think, is much more increased than it was just a few days ago.
And the good thing is we're talking about it, and that's the important thing. Greg, you're a gentleman. I appreciate your time, and look forward to talking again soon.
Anytime. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Greg Birbaum, who is Deputy Managing Editor for Politico. I'm Charles Showalter. You're listening to the Union Edge Laborers Talk Radio.
It's a scary world out there with global terrorists plotting to kill us. That's why we must be grateful to the National Security Agency and our Department of Homeland Security. They're constantly on watch, poised to spring to our defense, no matter from what hellhole the threat emanates. Have you ever heard of the rabbit hunter's nightmare? A guy dreams that he and a few of his buddies have fanned out across some brushland to scare up and shoot a few hares. They kill a couple, but then one of the hunting buddies who had headed down a slope into a thicket on the right suddenly comes bolting up the slope, all wild-eyed and screaming at the others, "Run, run, the rabbits have guns!" I thought of this recalibration of the hunting equation when I read that an outfit called the Dallas Safari Club had come up with a truly novel idea for saving Namibia's rare black rhinoceros, which is teetering on the edge of extinction. Several 100,000 of these unique animals existed a century ago, but only 1,800 remain in this African nation today. So, thinking way out of the box, the Safari Club says it will contribute to the black rhino conservation cause by auctioning off to one of the club's lucky members the chance to, warning, the following could make your head explode, go to Namibia with a really big gun and shoot one of the magnificent endangered creatures dead. Yes, to save the black rhino, kill it. The Safari Club's chieftain says that both the Namibian government and our own Fish and Wildlife Agency have okayed the kill. He claims that safari enthusiasts will bid as much as $1 million to be the one to pull the trigger. And yes, the head of the deceased will be severed, stuffed, mounted, and shipped back to the U.S. as a trophy for the shooter's den. To the club's credit, every dime from the auction will go to, oh the irony, Namibia's Black Rhino Conservation Fund. This is Jim Hightower saying, back to that rabbit scenario. Wouldn't the club's big game safari be fairer if high-powered guns were barred and the winning bidder had to try executing the rhino with a Swiss Army knife? Yeah, he could use the scissor blade, he could use the screwdriver, any blade he chose.
If you like these feisty pops of populism that Hightower zings out on the airwaves, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter provides the in-depth lowdown on what the greed heads of Wall Street and the boneheads of Washington are doing to us behind the scenes. With Hightower's saucy Texas humor and truth-telling populist perspective, the lowdown literally can lift you up. And get this, you can have the lowdown delivered to your mailbox or email each month for only $15 a year. Yes, 12 issues, only $15. Check it out, hightowerlowdown.org.
How is the National Security Agency tracking you?
I'm Baratunde Thurston from The Onion, and also, mother. You're listening to the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
It is collecting all the data about who you call and when and in what order and the location you were in, as well as all that information on the people you contacted and all those who were near you when you spoke or texted or emailed or searched the web, and all the data from any and all of those people as well. This so-called metadata gives law enforcement and bureaucrats a clear picture about you, who you associate with, what you think, what you do, who you do it with, and when you do it. The government says it can keep that information forever and use it however it wants to. All of this on totally law-abiding citizens suspected of no wrongdoing whatsoever. Fortunately, Federal District Court Judge Richard Leon has ruled that the government can't do this, that it's unconstitutional, a violation of the Fourth Amendment guarantee against unreasonable searches and seizures to place every American under permanent surveillance. Hopefully, Judge Leon's decision, which won't actually take effect until after all the appeals are completed, will be upheld by the United States Supreme Court. Hopefully, the Congress will pass the USA Freedom Act, which will roll back the national security state. Meanwhile, the government's position on constant surveillance of all of us? Yes, we can.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
Packers.
Vikings. We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown. We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full. But when we live united, we make a real difference in the building blocks of life. Children succeed in school, families gain financial stability, the health of our neighbors improves, and suddenly so do our communities. Real change won't happen without you.
Live united.
So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up today at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. Nearly 800 locked-out nurses and healthcare techs at New London, Connecticut's L&M Hospital will return to work today. The unilateral decision by hospital administrators to end the lockout came even as resumed talks have failed to reach an agreement on the core issue, patient care delivery at the hospital. The healthcare workers are returning to work under the terms of their union contracts that expired November 16th. The AFT locals representing the nurses and healthcare techs say their resolve is stronger than ever to reach an agreement on patient care delivery issues. AFT Connecticut spokesperson Matt O'Connor.
This really is a step in the right direction for the community. It was a win by members who pulled together and stood strong in the face of tremendous adversity and enormous onslaught by the administration of the hospital that they serve. And they really did so through their own solidarity and through the support of the community.
Corporate media has pounded away at how upset people were who got health insurance cancellation notices related to the Affordable Care Act health insurance reform. You may not have heard these stories, though. Here are just a few of the people nationwide who found that the Obamacare policies replacing those the insurance companies canceled are actually better and much less expensive. Sue Spanky, a self-employed artist in her 50s in Missoula, Montana, was paying $350 a month with a $5,000 deductible when her policy was canceled. She got a new one for $40 a month with a $500 deductible. In Lancaster, Pennsylvania, 58-year-old Lori Lapman went from a canceled plan costing her $520 a month to one that cost just $111.73. The Patriot News in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania also reported that Lynn Keltz saved $80 a month when her plan was canceled and she found a new one under the Obamacare exchanges. Supporters of the health care reform say while some people will have to pay more for their policies, they will mostly be more affluent people. When the new year dawns, right-wing groups in 34 states will begin launching coordinated attacks on public sector worker pensions and wages, environmental safeguards, and health care, among other issues. First reported in the Guardian newspaper, documents obtained by the paper show that the state policy network, funded by $83 million from the likes of the billionaire Koch brothers, big tobacco and pharmaceutical companies, plans media campaigns and political action to push so-called model legislation for moneyed interests. According to the documents, this will include attacks on public worker pensions in Arizona, Colorado, Minnesota, New Jersey, Missouri, and Pennsylvania. Opposition to Medicaid expansion to deny health insurance to more people in poverty will be launched in Georgia, North Carolina, Texas, and Utah by the State Policy Network. Attacks on union rights and public workers are also planned for Delaware and Nevada. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
American citizens everywhere are demanding and supporting speedy and complete action.
Broadcasting from the We Act radio studios in Washington, D.C., heard live across the nation, this is Take Action News with Karl Frisch.
Many of the world's great movements of thought and action have flowed from the work of a single man.
There is work to be done. The state of our economy calls for action, bold and swift, and we will act.
We will take action when action is required.
Hello and welcome to Take Action News. All weekend, I'm Karl Frisch. You can find more about me at karlfrisch.com. That's KarlFrisch.com. Be sure to sign up for my email list and follow me at Karl Frisch on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all the other places. Don't forget to connect with the show at takeactionnews.com. We've got Troy on the controls, and I want to give a special shout out to our affiliate in Chicago, WCPT's Chicago Progressive Talk. It's the holidays. Happy New Year to you and yours. We at Take Action News wanted to look at some of the best and worst this year has brought us. Of course, we'll be talking about the infamous War on Christmas, Fox News' annual gift to Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert. But we'll also take a look at some of the more seriously irresponsible reporting from the year that was with Eric Boehlert of Media Matters. It's been a huge year for gay rights, and we can really see public sentiment changing. Marriage equality took a huge leap forward this year, while statements of discrimination like Russia's anti-gay policies at the Sochi Games have been widely condemned. Later in the show, however, we'll talk to Chris Geidner of BuzzFeed about what's being called the gayest year on record, as well as what we can expect in the new year. And finally, as an equal opportunity show, we wanted to discuss two major non-Christian developments. A group of Satanists is trying to take advantage of an Oklahoma statute allowing for religious icons to be displayed in front of the State House, and why not? Florida already has a Festivus poll, and nothing really calamitous has happened except for the climate change-related storms over there in Florida. Andy Cobb from Second City will join us later in the show to talk about how he decorates his poll, his Festivus poll. So stick around. It'll be a fun show. We'll be right back.
If you're planning to replace your Social Security card simply because you don't have it, you may not need to replace it at all. What's most important is that you remember your Social Security number. Remember during school how you memorized information and answers for tests? In the same way, you should memorize your Social Security number. Knowing your number is important, but having the card may not be. If you really do need to get a replacement card to show to an employer, it's easy to apply for a new one. Find out how at www.socialsecurity.gov/SS number.
Sergeant Michelle Garcia served meritoriously in Iraq and has the medals to prove it. Soon after leaving the Navy, Lieutenant Chris Scott found a job, a home, and started a family of his own. Corpsman Richard Stokely took the skills he learned in Vietnam and put them to good use as a paramedic. But soon after leaving the military, each of these veterans fell on hard times and faced homelessness. Even after Michelle lost all her savings, even after Chris wasn't able to pay his mortgage, and even after Richard battled alcoholism for years, they each reached out for help when they needed it most. A simple phone call put them in touch with a trained professional from the Department of Veterans Affairs. That call got Michelle a place to stay until she could afford one of her own, put Chris in touch with employment assistance, and found Richard a substance abuse program. These veterans are success stories not only for how they were able to help others while serving their country, but for how they were able to let others help them. If you know of or are a veteran in need, make the call.
Hey there, Matthew Filipovich here, host of the creatively titled Matthew Filipovich Show, which, by the way, you can hear every single Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. right here on 1480 a.m. We Act Radio. Now, I'm going to be honest with you people, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I like talking to smart people who are smarter than me, some of the smartest, funniest, most badass progressives out there. People like Glenn Greenwald, Naomi Klein, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, Jamie Kilstein, Allison Kilkenny, Alan Grayson, Jeremy Scahill, Jim Hightower, and more. That's right, I said more. Don't believe me? Well, tune in to the Matthew Filipovich Show every single Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. for some of the best in liberal talk, news, comedy, and interviews right here on 1480 a.m. We Act Radio.
Friends, David Shuster here, and all of us at We Act Radio are so proud of our neighbors here in Southeast D.C., especially one of our partners, the Ark. The Ark is at 1901 Mississippi Avenue Southeast. It's the home to some of Washington's best, including the Washington Ballet, the Levine School of Music, Boys and Girls Club, and the Children's Health Project. All provide a number of programs and services within the very same facility. The Ark is also home to the Ark Theater, the only theater east of the river, which hosts a variety of dance, music, and theatrical shows each year. Almost everything you could want is at the Ark, so stop by and see them. The Ark, 1901 Mississippi Avenue in Southeast. For more information, visit the Ark's website, www.thearkdc.org, or call 202-889-5901. The Ark, part of Southeast D.C.
Welcome back. This is Take Action News. The Salvation Army is probably best known for its bell-ringing Santas, fundraising on the sidewalks around the country during this time of year. As it turns out, this holiday fixture has a somewhat anti-gay past. Truth Wins Out has spearheaded a campaign to get the Salvation Army to reform its anti-gay views. You know them. They're the folks that have been fighting the ex-gay movement at every turn for quite some time now. Here to talk with me about the campaign against the Salvation Army that has really brought in some really great results is Associate Director Evan Hurst. Evan, thanks for joining me.
Hi, how's it going?
Fantastic. I for one, for years, I would print out, so for people that don't know, I mean, this issue has really been around since the advent of political activism online. And these emails used to go around with these little certificates that you could print and then cut out and put in your wallet and carry with you, so that when you saw a Salvation Army Santa or somebody else ringing a bell, say in front of your local Target or pharmacy, you could put a little certificate in their kettle that said, I would have given you money, except the Salvation Army is anti-gay, so my money is going to go to a more deserving charity. I did that every year for the better part of a decade. But some things have changed with the Salvation Army, right?
They really do seem to be, of course, they do. They have an anti-gay past, and they acknowledge that.
Like not just not just anti-gay, like virulently anti-gay.
Yeah, virulently anti-gay past. And what's really interesting, and this is happening, it's been happening on a national level with what we at Truth Wins Out have been doing, and it's also been happening on a local level with lots of individual activists and people, especially now that they've been opening Croc centers around the country and everything, who have been really, going to the Salvation Army for the past couple of years and confronting them on this stuff. And the good news is that everybody that I've spoken to who's also, gone directly to them, they seem to be an organization that really sincerely is trying to change. And, are they perfect yet? No.
No, we've seen some isolated issues this holiday season. But from an outward-facing perspective, just as an example, y'all found that they had some ex-gay material still on their website. Yeah. And how long did it take for them to take that down once you pointed it out?
An hour, 2 hours.
Right.
Like that. It was ridiculous because, ridiculous in a great way, because what happened was that day we were just trying to figure out exactly where the organization stood. And we ended up just stumbling across those links on the website. And, Wayne Bevan, who I work with, the head of Truth Wins Out, he called me and he said, whoa, this is bad. We need to do something about this. And so we spent that day, I was talking to leadership from the Salvation Army. I was talking to some of their local people. And once it got in front of the right eyes, that website disappeared. And
then as part of that, they brought to your attention, and these links went around, that the Salvation Army now has a fairly clear anti-discrimination policy on its website,
yes,
not just in the people that they serve, because people may not know this, but the money that they're collecting actually goes towards, homeless shelters and drug and alcohol rehabilitation programs and a lot of different things that help get indigent people back on their feet. And so not only do they now have a very clear anti-discrimination policy on their website that includes sexual orientation, gender identity, but they also have one for employment.
Yes, absolutely. And, what it's really come down to for us is, the Salvation Army is a church, and, as such, they're entitled to their beliefs. Like I said, they really do seem like they're trying to change, but I think that, the LGBT community at this point, it's a matter of conscience. If you look at everything that they do, and you decide that that the fact that their private religious beliefs are not affirming, and if you decide that that's too much, and you'd rather give your money to another organization that does similar work, then fine, please do. Just make.
Well, in my book, as a gay man, when I talk to LGBT folks or people that are really concerned about LGBT equality, when they're looking at things like the Salvation Army, other folks that deal with homelessness and helping folks in need, I tell them that they're probably better suited to be giving their money towards, a service that deals with homeless gay youth, for example. The Ali Forney Center in New York City, for example.
Right, and like I said, it really is a matter of conscience, and it's if you feel, like I said, if you feel like like the work that they do outweighs your objections, then give. If not, then don't. We're not really telling anybody what to do, but at the same time, we do want people to know that that the organization does seem to be changing. It's important, and this as a longtime activist. It's important to really discern who really is your enemy and who really isn't.
Well, it's also important to point out when somebody does change. This is a fairly seismic shift as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
Earlier this season, I had already posted my annual Facebook post telling people not to give to the Salvation Army. And then a friend shared a link from Truth Wins Out that went up I think the same day, and I was shocked because I remember even 1 or 2 years ago, the Salvation Army saying, "Look, we don't discriminate based on who we give our services to, but we're not going to hire gay people." Or going back to those things that were said in radio interviews where they said that gay people should be stoned because it was part of their religious belief.
Right.
This is a huge change, and
honestly, I've got to say, I still see that there's a blog post that's been going around, and a lot of people listening will have seen it on Facebook talking about the gays should be killed kind of thing. And to be fair to the organization, that did happen, but it was It was somebody in the Australian arm that had
Right.
nothing to do with the American organization. And the Salvation Army was not happy with that. I mean, they were extremely
We know that now, but for quite some time that went unresponded to.
Honestly, I don't remember. My impression was that they had responded to it earlier on, but that, I feel like the story has taken a life of its own.
Sure.
And so I keep seeing that being reposted, and I keep going, okay, that's true, that happened, but okay, everybody, okay, because we don't do ourselves any favors as a movement by acting like wingnuts. I mean, the thing is, right now, of course, the story of today is, people crying about freedom of speech because the Duck Dynasty guy got suspended.
Right.
And, of course, it has nothing to
Look,
do
I'm not judging the Duck Dynasty guy or the Klan or neo-Nazis or duck-screwing bestiality supporters. I'll leave it to God to judge those people.
Right, exactly. I mean, but so, like I said, and a lot of the people who are screaming about that, they're the same people who were calling for Martin Bashir's head on MSNBC. Suddenly their definition of free speech was different.
Right.
Than it is for the Duck Dynasty guy. So,
But what does it say about our culture that we've moved in this direction? I mean, we've seen a lot of big changes, and we'll be talking to Chris Geidner from BuzzFeed later in the program about the big year that was gay and what to expect in 2014. But from a cultural perspective, to see institutions like the Boy Scouts of America and the Salvation Army even making small steps in the right direction, I mean, they're actually quite large if you consider how much effort's gone into holding these organizations accountable, in the same year, that's pretty big, isn't it?
It's huge, and what's really happened, I think that, honestly, in the past couple of years, Wayne and I have talked about this quite a bit. I think what's happened is we've really reached a tipping point in the culture where the average American, I'm not talking about a gay activist, nor am I talking about a conservative activist. The average American hears stuff like this. They hear about anti-gay discrimination. They hear about anti-gay hate. It just doesn't sit well with them.
Right.
Even people who, I'm just Joe Schmo in the middle, in the heartland, which the conservatives always like to talk about. It just doesn't sit right with them anymore.
Well, it's interesting because, it's not that, more conservative folks have to become pro-gay to win the gay vote. I don't think that's going to happen for a while. They actually have to become pro-gay because women and independent voters look at people who are anti-gay with puzzlement. They don't get it, and they think that people who are anti-gay are off the rocker.
Well, and this is the thing that we've been talking about for years and years, that the most effective form of activism, really for decades, has been coming out. And, that's one of the big things, is that you've got these moderate conservatives, who really aren't, too extreme on anything. My parents are moderate Republicans, and they look at situations like this and they hear the rhetoric from the religious right, and they go, yeah, but my son or my nephew or my niece, and they're going, that's not what these people are like, and I know it. And so the religious right has lost that argument. They can't create this, this mythical beast of what an LGBT person is like, because far too many of the people who would otherwise listen, they have gay family members. Their kid's teacher is gay. They have people they go to church with, and so I
just feel like as these cultural institutions begin to change and as more progress is made legislatively and at the ballot box, we're going to see the last throes of a very committed anti-gay movement that is struggling to hold on, and they're going to get more and more desperate.
Well, and the thing that's important to understand, though, and this is something that we are just starting to talk about, is that as they've lost here, the religious right, all the way from the big organizations down to really small kind of people like Peter LaBarbera, they're seeing an opportunity in development.
Internationally. I mean, we've seen them involved in Russia and parts of Africa. It's absolutely frightening. We're going to have to dig into that more in the new year, but I want to thank you, Evan Hurst, the Associate Director at Truth Wins Out, for joining us today. You can follow him at Evan Hurst on Twitter, follow them at Truth Wins Out on Twitter, and go to their website, truthwinsout.org, and sign up. This is Take Action News, and when we come back, we're going to talk to our good friend Tina Dupuis about Megyn Kelly from Fox News. Is she white, or is that Santa Claus? I'm confused.
You're listening to Take Action News on We Act Radio, produced at the studios of WPWC 1480 AM in Washington, D.C., your nation's capital.
I had a sore in my mouth that just wouldn't go away. And after a couple of weeks, I went to my doctor.
A sore, lump, or thick patch in your mouth or throat could be a symptom of oral cancer.
My doctor told me I was smart to come in. He said that oral cancer is more common in African American men than in any other group in the U.S. It turns out I did have oral cancer, but it was caught early and my treatment was successful. I'm glad I got it checked. That probably saved my life.
If you're an African American man, you need to know about oral cancer. Visit a doctor or dentist if you see changes in your mouth that don't go away after 2 weeks. It's important to get an oral cancer exam because if you do have cancer, the earlier it's caught, the better. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, National Institutes of Health.
Jeff, I'm home.
Hey, Mom.
So, what did you do today? I noticed the dishes are still in the sink.
I've been busy.
Getting your taxes done like we talked about?
Oh, I got my friend Dave on that. Hey, he's only charging $20.
Not Dave from your high school class who graduated 3 years late.
Yeah, he's good with numbers. Won our fantasy football league last year.
Jeff, I can't believe you would actually take your...
Kidding, Mom. I took all my paperwork over to that preparer just like you recommended.
Using a paid tax preparer this year? Visit irs.gov for some do's and don'ts. Like look for a preparer who has a preparer tax ID number and signs your return. Check out their qualifications and review your tax return before you sign it.
Oh, Jeff, why do you do this to me?
Mom, you're just so easy.
irs.gov. It's the best tax tip of all.
You know, this used to be a good neighborhood. Now it's a mess. You got all these polyps running around. Stick it in the apple.
Colon cancer almost always starts with the polyp. Get the polyp early and stop colon cancer before it even starts.
Where do you think you were running to, huh? I didn't even see you guys there. I don't know.
Get the test, get the polyp,
I want to talk to my lawyer!
get the cure.
I got a phone call!
CD is for everybody, not just for the few. Anyone can share VD with someone nice as you.
If you're curious or confused, get information or a pamphlet at most pharmacies or a health clinic. If you need help, see a doctor.
Would you like to secure stable employment, affordable, high-quality child care, or an opportunity to serve your community through meaningful volunteer and internship experiences? If so, UPO is the place for you. Hello, I'm Andrea Thomas, Vice President of Administration and Chief of Staff for UPO. As the Community Action Agency for Washington, D.C., UPO has proudly served the residents of Washington for the past 50 years. Annually, we impact the lives of nearly 100,000 Washingtonians, 100,000 people advancing their education, securing employment, maintaining housing stability, and investing in their communities through volunteerism. Our vision is a Washington of thriving communities and self-sufficient residents. To learn more about our services and how you can partner with us or donate, visit us at www.upo.org. UPO, where we are uniting people with opportunity.
Welcome back. Take Action News. Karl Frisch here. So we're finally on the other side of Christmas, which means that the war on Christmas is over and won't officially start back up until what? Next March, I guess. But I figured we'd spend some time digging into it a little bit since it is the reason for the season. The reason for the season is the war on Christmas, not some holiday based on the winter solstice. But well, let's just get into it with our good friend, Tina Dupuis. She's a syndicated columnist. You know her, you love her. Tina, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Karl.
All right. So I feel like the war on Christmas begins even before pharmacies and stores across the country start selling holiday decorations, but it was particularly insane this year, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it got a little creepy. See, here's the thing with the war on Christmas, because really it boils down to what are we fighting for in the war on Christmas? We're fighting about whether happy holidays, which is a contraction of holy days, is somehow not as pious as saying Merry Christmas.
Because Christmas has Christ in it and the word Mass, right. So it's actually specific to Christianity, whereas holy days could mean Ramadan, and you don't want to celebrate those Muslims.
Right. But here's the thing. The war on Christmas is actually only like a one-sided war. And it's a side where, like, they admittedly have an imaginary figure, an omnipotent mythical figure who can break into your house with impunity. So they kind of, like, in every respect, are just making this all up. So my suggestion is that they declare a make-believe armistice over their imaginary war, because yeah, this year it just got ridiculous where Megyn Kelly of Fox News...
Yeah, let's dig into Megyn Kelly, because that was...
Okay. Shall you or shall I?
I want you to unpack it for us.
Okay, so there's a segment. Now, mind you, it's Fox News and it's 10 o'clock at night, right?
Yes.
So it's Fox News, it's Megyn Kelly, and for some reason she keeps on doing this weird wink thing to the kids at home, right? The proverbial... alleged children watching this at 10 o'clock at night.
No, they're up in the daytime watching all the blonde anchor's legs.
Right. But she wants them all to know that Santa Claus is real. And what they're talking about is not meaning that she doesn't want to spoil anybody's fantasy by saying anything that would maybe hint towards Santa Claus being made up, because the 5-year-olds who are watching are really would be really upset. But also, she goes like, look, Santa Claus is white, deal with it, so is Jesus. Because, and I thought this was really interesting.
You know what's crazy, though, Tina? It's no different than any other bonker BS that you see on Fox. You know, when they say something like, we all know that global warming's not real, it's cold in New York City. And then liberals go, okay, hang on a second, let me explain to you the difference between climate and weather. Okay, we've already lost at that point. And now, you know, a lot of liberals' first reaction to Megyn Kelly saying that Santa and Jesus were white was, okay, let me tell you a little bit about geography in ancient times and where these people are from. Understand that people were dark-skinned who came from Turkey, which is where St. Nicholas was from, and none of that matters.
Right, because at that point, right, you're exactly right. Like, once you start explaining, you have lost.
Right.
Because this has gotten absolutely ridiculous. But I just love the whole premise of, like, Fox News so blatant, and Megyn Kelly specifically, so blatantly, like, perpetrating and perpetuating a myth. I just think that...
Well, not just a myth, but, like...
the people who were suddenly upset by that, and I was like...
How did you phrase it on Twitter? You said something like, Megyn Kelly is debating the fact of Santa's race? Or something like that?
No, we got trapped this year debating the race of our imaginary friend.
Right. No, my imaginary friend Petey is a white guy.
Right. No, my imaginary friends are much more inclusive and multicultural.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Prancer is a gay reindeer.
Precisely.
Prancer is gay. Blitzen
Prancer is a drag queen.
Blitzen is Filipino. We know that. Dixon, I believe Dixon's one of the reindeer. He just doesn't get to go around with Santa much.
I'm impressed with how many reindeer names you actually know.
I know all of the reindeers.
I just want you to get it.
Donner and Blitzen, Prancer, Rudolph, Coulter.
I think Rudolph has a drinking problem.
Rudolph does have a drinking problem. He's got a red nose just like Santa.
Also Frosty. I was walking in Central Park. This is a true story. I was walking in Central Park last night, and there was a homeless snowman sleeping on a bench. It is a rough town.
He's just waiting to melt. Now, what would Fox News say about a homeless snowman? He's looking for like a
scammer.
He's got his cob pipe out for a handout.
Right. He's a moocher and a scammer. That's their new.
Yeah.
That's their new thing.
If he's so cold and hungry, he should eat his nose and burn his eyes. That was really lame. I apologize for that. But so this whole discussion consumed Fox News after Megyn Kelly said this. You had Bill O'Reilly jumping in and saying, no, we're doing it live and Megyn Kelly's right. Santa and Jesus are white.
He said that Santa is white, or Jesus isn't white, but Santa is.
Oh, that's right. He was, just to be clear, he was,
We actually started debating this.
Well, and what's interesting, it's kind of like when Fox News holds up like the Westboro Baptist Church to show that they're not crazy. Bill O'Reilly's like, no, I'm the serious adult in the room. Jesus was not white, but Santa, yes, Santa is white. My favorite was that a lot of these people weren't saying was white.
Right.
They were saying is.
Exactly. Precisely.
This 1,000-year-old person.
I didn't realize this was controversial. I mean, Hilltop Mall in Richmond, California, I believe it is. Hilltop Mall has had a black Santa for 20 years.
Well, and you had that poor child who was told by his teachers in the South that he couldn't be Santa because Santa was white and he's an African American. Or that woman that was punched by somebody at a Walmart because she said Happy Holidays when she was ringing her bell for donations instead of Merry Christmas. Who knew that the war on Christmas would have a body count?
Right, but I mean, this again, we're talking about, and this comes up vaguely sometimes every so often around Halloween, which All Hallows Eve means All Souls Eve. It's a religious holiday. It has nothing to do with like evil spirits or whatever, but it's been because people who kind of profit from being under siege, there's nothing that will bring your flock together as closer than an outside threat, and so they kind of make up the threat. And
well, my favorite thing about the war on Christmas is that nobody ever says that the war on Christmas has anything to do with corporatism. In fact, it's cheered by the likes of Palin and other perpetrators.
Yes, that is true. I mean, that was like the weirdest thing about her incredibly weird book tour, was that she thought that the commercialization was a great thing. So that's also bizarre. But I mean, so they're admittedly not talking about the Christian Bible or the Jesus of the Bible. What they're talking about is basically the prosperity gospel, which is that God's riches, God bestows His love upon you by riches, and if you don't have riches, that's because you have sinned in some way and you've done something wrong. And it's an easy way of, and this isn't, by the way, only an American doctrine. This doesn't exist in any other. That's why everyone in American Catholics are shocked by the Pope. This does not exist. This prosperity gospel does not exist in the rest of the world. It just doesn't. This is made in America. It really started with the televangelist in the 80s during the kind of the rah-rah Reagan years, where people had to send money to these people of faith, and showing bling and showing your love and devotion for your pastor was shown by him wearing bigger rings and having a Cadillac.
Well, and if you just have more faith, you'll get rich, and your cancer will be cured, and everything else.
Right, and giving money to people exactly for faith healing. I mean, this really started in this country in the 1980s, and then again, if you remember, in the 1980s, we had this kind of made-up threat with a satanic conspiracy. There was Black Sabbath and Judas Priest. These heavy metal bands were trying to kill all their fans and make them all commit suicide. And they had the FBI got on board to investigate this satanic conspiracy that turned out to be absolutely nothing. But it made a lot of people who were fighting the satanic conspiracy incredibly rich.
Well, it's also it's a very interesting piece of a story. I know that you've written quite a bit, or done quite a bit of research into this whole satanic thing. Can you unpack that a little bit, and maybe we can pick it up after the break too?
Right. So, this really started with the kind of social change that in the 60s and the 70s, where there were people who were starting to do yoga, and there was upheaval and women asking for rights and so this is kind of the backlash of the civil rights era.
So that's what you need to know to start this off. This discussion of Satanism in this country is that it started when women got uppity. And when we come back, Tina Dupuy is going to explain to us how this scourge of satanic worship enveloped a country. This is Take Action News. I'm Karl Frisch. We'll be right back with Tina Dupuy.
You say you want to go to college, a Big Ten college, but you don't want to feel like part of the, well, you know. Is there an answer for you? Of course.
Welcome back. Take Action News all weekend. I'm Karl Frisch. It is the holiday season, so we are talking with Tina Dupuy about what else? Satanism and uppity feminists. Tina, thanks for sticking around.
And civil rights, they all kind of...
So when we last left you, you were telling us about how this whole scourge of satanic, the occult had swept across the country, and it all started with women wanting their rights in the 60s and 70s.
Right. It started when the baby boomers started coming of age. Their parents kind of looked at these teenagers, having a sexual revolution, and they kind of decided that there had to be some kind of conspiracy. This was demonic, and there had to be something more coordinated. It just couldn't be that everyone wanted to suddenly get into yoga. There had to be people placing that. There had to be a reason, and what better than Satan himself, the Prince of Darkness. So this all kind of started. There was a man by the name of Mike Warnke. He is still alive, and he was he went to Vietnam for about 6 months, and he was just this kind of comedian who was able to spin some yarns. And so he wrote a book. He became an evangelical, and he kind of, I think, just became very popular, talking about how his witness story,
how he became born again.
Right. His story about coming to Christ was that he was a Satanist, and I think that he was able to flesh this out just talking in church, and people encouraged it. So in the mid-'70s, he wrote a book called The Satan Seller. That was a memoir, an autobiography about how he was a high priest in a satanic cult. And he talks about how he was a junior college dropout, but the Prince of Darkness really liked him and really wanted him to shoot up drugs and get laid. So he hooked him up. And he goes into detail things like he goes to Salem, of course, to hang out with witches.
Right. That's where they are. If you're a witch, you want to hang out where the last good things happened.
He meets the man who in the Satanic Bible, Anton LaVey, and he calls him a phony, which is probably the best part of the book. But so for the next decade, he becomes the go-to guy because he was a Satanist and he was high up in the satanic priesthood. He becomes the go-to guy for journalists, I'm doing air quotes, to go and talk to about this satanic...
Which is exactly what ended up happening, right?
That's exactly what ends up happening. And so for the next decade, there are books that come out, and they all use Mike Warnke as a reference. They all go, this is what I experienced, not unlike what Mike Warnke talks about in his book. And it wasn't until sometime in the 1990s or the early 1990s where two evangelical investigative journalists, the kind of Woodward and Bernstein of the Christian community, actually go and fact check his story. A lot of the details that he gave, of course, were obviously untrue, and he had made up story. He even made up the way his mother had died. There were just none of the stuff that he had been saying for all these years had been true. But in that time,
And how did he reply to this? Was he possessed, and that's why he lied?
Well, he applied to this by self-appointing a committee of elders to exonerate him. And the last thing I saw him, he was on a Baker's new show, and talked to. He's still claiming that he was a Satanist, and it's really Christians who are the ones who were truly evil because they were so mean to him.
Now, Tina. These little stories of the occult ended up popping up all over the country in this period, right?
Absolutely. It was said that everywhere where Mike Warnke went, there was a satanic conspiracy that popped up. But what happened was that a lot of children ended up, and the most famous, of course, being the West Memphis Three, who spent 20 years in prison. They were never exonerated; they were just released, but they still have a record. But they were nothing more than like wearing black in West Memphis in the late 80s. Judas Priest was sued by the parents of two children who had committed suicide. They said that there were subliminals that actually went to court. So at a musical group who had never actually met these fans were accused of conspiring to have them kill themselves. And this actually was adjudicated, if you can imagine that. And there were, by some estimates, upwards of 60 or 80 people serving time for being a part of a satanic conspiracy that did not ever happen. The most expensive trial of the 1980s was the McMartin case.
That was out in That was in Los Angeles.
That was.
It was a preschool not far from where I grew up.
Yes, there was a woman who accused one of the kind of nebbish, weird teachers of abusing children, and so she started talking about the children all had identical stories, which had caves that were underneath the preschool. Of course,
right. I remember they excavated at the preschool to try and find these caves.
Yes, and they kept the accused teacher in jail for 9 years, and the original mother who did this first accusation ended up being a schizophrenic who died of alcoholism before it ever went to trial. Just absolutely embarrassing. And this was also perpetrated by the media. 2020 did a special about the satanic conspiracy that if you can Google it and watch it now, and it's hilarious. But this wasn't like we had 200 channels. I mean, this was on prime time, and there were 40 million Americans who were watching this.
Which only made it spread even more, the notion that this was happening.
Right, and then people started becoming experts, and then people started being able to monetize this, and then there were newsletters, and people were making money off this. And so the more they were able to make money off this, the more the conspiracy heightened, because then
because you've got to one up one of your other the other conspiracy theorists so that you'll make the money.
Exactly. Well, proof that this is real is because you've never heard of it and there's no evidence.
Well, I mean, that's the thing about conspiracy theories, right? Anything that might lend credence is just further proof of how deep the conspiracy theory is, and anything that points in the opposite direction is only proof of how deep the conspiracy theory is.
Right. And again, I mean, it's called a conspiracy theory because there's no proof.
Right.
That's the whole basis. But yeah, so this was something that ultimately made a lot of people very wealthy, because the only antidote, the only way to fight Satan is with Jesus, is with a Christian faith. And if you had a Christian faith, then Satan wouldn't hurt you. And so it got the flock to act right, I guess, by using the scare tactic. But to me, when I see the war on Christmas, I see this very, very cynical attempt to get Christians to defend their faith, when really this season is all about the Christian faith. Like, everyone just needs to calm down. The war on Christmas is it's
nothing. The war on Christmas can't be,
and it's cynical.
We can defeat the war on Christmas with just a little Jesus.
It's like everyone needs to calm down.
Well, and a lot of the times these things that you hear, and this is
8 weeks of our year is spent on Christmas. Like, just everyone,
Well, and to your point about the parallels with this and the whole satanic occult conspiracies, look at how these little stories pop up in towns you've never heard of, where somebody says that, Todd Starnes from Fox News will report that a school is forbidding the discussion or the display of Christmas cards this year. And then a reporter actually calls the school and says, "What's going on?" And they said, "Oh, no, we're not forbidding it. We've just moved it into the teacher's lounge so that we can respect the privacy of our teachers who display their own personal holiday cards." And that gets blown up into like some giant thing, and all they took was 5 minutes of reporting to figure out it was nothing.
Right, because they have already made a decision about something, and they're trying to find evidence to add to their conviction. So it's they have a worldview, and that's if Christianity is not under siege, if there is not a threat to Christianity, if there's not a threat to Christmas as we know it, then they have no reason to fight. Then they have won, and once they've won, then they can't fight anymore, and then the money kind of stops pouring in. So yeah, this is completely fake. It's completely phony, and this year got really racist.
Oh man, Tina, we've got a few seconds left. Do you have a New Year's resolution?
That's good. No, not yet. One holiday at a time, man.
Take up arms in the war on New Year's, I guess.
Yeah. Do you have any?
I do not, thankfully. But we've got to let you go there, Tina.
Thanks. New Year's resolutions.
Thanks for everything this year and coming on the show so frequently. We've appreciated having you on.
Thank you, Karl. You're the best. Merry Christmas and happy holidays.
Alrighty. That's just about it. This is Take Action News, and when we come back, more great talk. We'll be back after this.
I'm Gary Johnson, former governor of New Mexico. Last year, my state became the 12th state to allow medical use of marijuana by patients who are seriously ill. Some people were surprised that a Republican governor supports medical marijuana, but I'm hardly alone. Groups like the American College of Physicians, American Nurses Association, and American Public Health Association have all acknowledged the medical value of marijuana. New research about medical marijuana is coming out almost every day, showing remarkable potential in all sorts of serious conditions, including cancer, AIDS, and chronic pain. But some in government still want to put politics and ideology ahead of public health. To learn more about medical marijuana and what you can do to help, contact the Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or visit them on the web at mpp.org. Thanks.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM, broadcasting live from Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue in D.C.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. Nearly 800 locked-out nurses and healthcare techs at New London, Connecticut's L&M Hospital will return to work today. The unilateral decision by hospital administrators to end the lockout came even as resumed talks have failed to reach an agreement on the core issue, patient care delivery at the hospital. The healthcare workers are returning to work under the terms of their union contracts that expired November 16th. The AFT locals representing the nurses and healthcare techs say their resolve is stronger than ever to reach an agreement on patient care delivery issues. AFT Connecticut spokesperson Matt O'Connor.
This really is a step in the right direction for the community. It was a win by members who pulled together and stood strong in the face of tremendous adversity and enormous onslaught by the administration of the hospital that they serve. And they really did so through their own solidarity and through the support of the community.
Corporate media has pounded away at how upset people were who got health insurance cancellation notices related to the Affordable Care Act health insurance reform. You may not have heard these stories, though. Here are just a few of the people nationwide who found that the Obamacare policies replacing those the insurance companies canceled are actually better and much less expensive. Sue Spanky, a self-employed artist in her 50s in Missoula, Montana, was paying $350 a month with a $5,000 deductible when her policy was canceled. She got a new one for $40 a month with a $500 deductible. In Lancaster, Pennsylvania, 58-year-old Lori Lapman went from a canceled plan costing her $520 a month to one that cost just $111.73. The Patriot News in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania also reported that Lynn Keltz saved $80 a month when her plan was canceled and she found a new one under the Obamacare exchanges. Supporters of the health care reform say while some people will have to pay more for their policies, they will mostly be more affluent people. When the new year dawns, right-wing groups in 34 states will begin launching coordinated attacks on public sector worker pensions and wages, environmental safeguards, and health care, among other issues. First reported in the Guardian newspaper, documents obtained by the paper show that the state policy network, funded by $83 million from the likes of the billionaire Koch brothers, big tobacco and pharmaceutical companies, plans media campaigns and political action to push so-called model legislation for moneyed interests. According to the documents, this will include attacks on public worker pensions in Arizona, Colorado, Minnesota, New Jersey, Missouri, and Pennsylvania. Opposition to Medicaid expansion to deny health insurance to more people in poverty will be launched in Georgia, North Carolina, Texas, and Utah by the State Policy Network. Attacks on union rights and public workers are also planned for Delaware and Nevada. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Over 13 million people are affected by famine, war, and drought in the Horn of Africa. Unfortunately, just listening to this commercial won't help them. Just listening won't give them their next meal or shelter or hope. You can help by texting GIVE to 777-444 to donate $10 and by going to usaid.gov/FWD to forward the facts. Brought to you by the Ad Council and USAID. Text donations go directly to Consortium of Humanitarian Relief Organizations. Standard text and data rates apply.
Have you ever heard of the rabbit hunter's nightmare? A guy dreams that he and a few of his buddies have fanned out across some brushland to scare up and shoot a few hares. They kill a couple, but then one of the hunting buddies who had headed down a slope into a thicket on the right suddenly comes bolting up the slope, all wild-eyed and screaming at the others, "Run, run, the rabbits have guns!" I thought of this recalibration of the hunting equation when I read that an outfit called the Dallas Safari Club had come up with a truly novel idea for saving Namibia's rare black rhinoceros, which is teetering on the edge of extinction. Several 100,000 of these unique animals existed a century ago, but only 1,800 remain in this African nation today. So, thinking way out of the box, the Safari Club says it will contribute to the black rhino conservation cause by auctioning off to one of the club's lucky members the chance to, warning, the following could make your head explode, go to Namibia with a really big gun and shoot one of the magnificent endangered creatures dead. Yes, to save the black rhino, kill it. The Safari Club's chieftain says that both the Namibian government and our own Fish and Wildlife Agency have okayed the kill. He claims that safari enthusiasts will bid as much as $1 million to be the one to pull the trigger. And yes, the head of the deceased will be severed, stuffed, mounted, and shipped back to the U.S. as a trophy for the shooter's den. To the club's credit, every dime from the auction will go to, oh the irony, Namibia's Black Rhino Conservation Fund. This is Jim Hightower saying, back to that rabbit scenario. Wouldn't the club's big game safari be fairer if high-powered guns were barred and the winning bidder had to try executing the rhino with a Swiss Army knife? Yeah, he could use the scissor blade, he could use the screwdriver, any blade he chose.
If you like these feisty pops of populism that Hightower zings out on the airwaves, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter provides the in-depth lowdown on what the greed heads of Wall Street and the boneheads of Washington are doing to us behind the scenes. With Hightower's saucy Texas humor and truth-telling populist perspective, the lowdown literally can lift you up. And get this, you can have the lowdown delivered to your mailbox or email each month for only $15 a year. Yes, 12 issues, only $15. Check it out, hightowerlowdown.org.
American citizens everywhere are demanding and supporting speedy and complete action.
Broadcasting from the We Act radio studios in Washington, D.C., heard live across the nation, this is Take Action News with Karl Frisch.
Many of the world's great movements of thought and action have flowed from the work of a single man.
There is work to be done. The state of our economy calls for action, bold and swift, and we will act.
We will take action when action is required.
Welcome back. This is Take Action News. All weekend, I'm Karl Frisch. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. We've got Troy on controls. Special shout out to our affiliate, WCPT, Chicago's Progressive Talk. We've been talking about the year that was and the year that will be and everything in between. And each week on the show, we've been talking to our good friend Jason Stanford, the Democratic consultant, author, and syndicated columnist, about the craziest things that right-wingers have been saying. And how can you possibly do a show to bring the year to a close without digging in deeper into some of the craziest things that right-wingers have said all year. Jason, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Karl. It's quite an honor to be here to sum up the year of derp. I mean, this has been land rush business and Republican stupidity this year.
All right. So I've got a giant list of like 50 things in front of me that we could talk about. Let's just start at the top. I mean, Rolling Stone has this great list of the 50 dumbest things right-wingers said in 2013. And I think you would be particularly proud that the top two are Ted Cruz and Steve Stockman. So, Texas in the House. Why don't you tick off some of these for us and we can chat about it?
Well, Steve Stockman is great. He's the guy who's from East Texas, whose campaign office was condemned by the local authorities there. And, we're talking about Texas. we don't even inspect our exploding fertilizer plants, even after that one exploded. So if you've got your campaign office condemned, you must be doing something really great. Anyway, his contribution to the year in idiocy was this quote when he said, "The best thing about Earth is that if you poke holes in it, oil and gas come out."
That's the best thing about it.
The very, very best thing about Earth.
I mean, just a naked appeal to the industry. It's just fascinating. And this is a guy who wants to be senator.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, that would put him probably in the mainstream of the Republican caucus right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sarah Palin, of course, she's going to be on anybody's list of craziness from the right. She was talking about the Syrian conflict, and she said, "Let Allah sort it out."
Exactly. Now, I think what she said today about the Duck Dynasty guy might trump her stupid thing about Allah, but still, that's pretty dumb. As you're right. I think your pronunciation was probably more honest and faithful to her original reading. She probably did mispronounce Allah. Yeah.
What did she have to say about the Duck Dynasty guys? As if they need more attention.
It's a horrible incursion on someone's freedom of expression, and this is just more political correctness. I mean, obviously,
I think I have to remind listeners once again that when you were born, the government is not allowed to infringe on your freedom of speech and expression. That does not mean, however, that you are guaranteed a television program. Because if you were guaranteed a television program in the First Amendment, I would be saying, sign me up right now.
Well, I can understand why people are confused about this. I mean, can't you, Karl? I mean, it seems like everyone has a reality show nowadays. So if someone
Sarah Palin's had 3.
Exactly. It's almost like they've lost their rights when they lose their TV show.
Well, not far behind Sarah Palin, you've got Joe Barton, another Texan.
I know. I love this one. This is so great. Do you want to read it or should I?
I think you should go for it.
Same time.
Do your best Joe Barton impersonation.
He is a big pro-energy apologist up there. He's the guy that once said that one of the cures for global warming is people should find more shade. So we're not looking at a good embrace of modern scientific thought here.
Right.
What he said is the Great Flood is an example of climate change. And that certainly wasn't because mankind developed hydrocarbon energy. Of course, it makes perfect sense.
No, Noah's Ark? We should just build another one.
Yeah, once again, we got a Texas congressman looking to the Bible for scientific purposes.
I wish that Republicans would advocate building an ark to save 2 of everything, just so they can see how ridiculous the notion that ever happened is.
2 of everything? That'll just lead to bestiality.
Well, you have 2 of everything. I mean, nobody ever thought, why didn't the lions eat the gazelles on the boat?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And why would you, not to mention that there are millions of species. Just ridiculous. And it's always funny to watch, people from your state talking about climate change.
Yeah. I mean, we think everything's hot down here, so what's the big deal? It's gallingly horrible. And then you got the New Earth people. Like, the people think that Earth is only 4,000 years old, in the same party with the people who think dinosaur juice is what makes, our Earth great, with the same people who think, oh, this isn't any big deal. Let me explain all this, billions of years of science so that we can make hydrocarbon energy safe.
No, you can't talk about science because science has a verifiable liberal bias, like the media and letters and shapes and colors and smells. So
I also admired you bringing up logic to disprove Noah's Ark. I mean, that's adorable, Karl.
Yeah, I try. What's fascinating to me on this Rolling Stones list, is that you don't have to go far. It's like Texan, other, Texan, other, Texan, other. So now one of the others is Rand Paul, and he says they're coming after your donuts. He said this after the FDA said that it wanted to phase out trans fats. This whole notion, I mean, what's fascinating to me is that conservatives will, remember when Michelle Obama wanted to more accurately reflect the amount of sodium in a product and get manufacturers to reduce the sodium in their frozen foods. And the right wing went apoplectic in the same way that they did about the stuff about trans fats, Because they say it's all about freedom and letting people choose to eat whatever they want to eat. But in reality, it's about protecting food manufacturers.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's a big deal. I mean, they really do think a good diet plan is cutting food stamps. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Or eating food stamps. Louis Gohmert is next on the list, another Texan. I'm surprised they only had one thing from him.
They probably could have come up with a whole list of 50 from Uncle Louis. I mean, I'm dying to hear what he has to say about the Duck Dynasty. It's going to be a great day here in Texas with everyone upset about that.
But what did he have to say?
He said, "We know Al-Qaeda has camps on the Mexican border. We have people that are trained to act Hispanic when they are radical Islamists." Sure.
So we have people that are trained to act Hispanic, or the radical Islamists have those people? I'm confused a little bit.
He was using the local vernacular. It's clear that he was talking about Al-Qaeda has people that are trained to act Hispanic.
Has anybody ever stood up to him at a town hall meeting and said, "Congressman, you're an idiot," and then just walked away?
Oh, no. I think he really does represent a special little corner of Texas where he might be a good representation of the population.
I would love to do that. I would love to just stand there at his next town hall meeting and said, "Congressman, thank you so much for taking my question. It's really more of a statement. You are an idiot." And then just walking away regardless of what he has to say.
Yeah, you'd be booed. You would probably run out of town.
That's fine.
To visit you.
I wouldn't want to spend too much time in that town anyways. And then we'll hit a couple more before we take a break, and then we'll come back. But you've got Ted Yoho. He's a Florida guy, which is just about as good as Texas.
Am I the only one who thinks Ted YOLO every time he talks?
I think about it. You only live once, so why not Why not say it's a racist tax when talking about tanning salon taxes?
Yes, because of course they discriminate against white people.
I would love to discriminate against John Boehner. For people that don't know, news came out this week that John Boehner is renting his apartment in Washington from a tanning salon lobbyist, which is fascinating because he's got a fancy Capitol Hill apartment, 2 bedrooms, $1,600 a month. That may sound like a lot of money, but that's a steal. You can't even get a studio in D.C. for $1,600 a month. That's nice. And he's got a 2-bedroom, so he's getting a sweetheart deal. He's probably getting free tanning, too. Jason, you mind sticking around so we can dig through more of these crazy statements by Republicans this year?
You couldn't scare me away with the Michelle Bachmann Halloween mask.
Thankfully, I don't have mine. I have my Marcus. Oh, wait, no. That's just me in a mirror being gay. All right. This is Take Action News. I'm Karl Frisch. We'll be back with more from Jason Stanford. Stick around.
Our children are exposed to violence every day, in their neighborhoods, in their schools, even in their own homes. Exposure to violence can have a devastating and lifelong impact. Through community action and leadership at the national level, we're identifying the children who need our help. I'm Attorney General Eric Holder, and I'm asking those of you who have a role in a child's life to take action. Through your attention and early intervention, we can help children in need to heal, to thrive. Together, we can change their lives and their futures.
Join the Justice Department in defending childhood.
100% success rate in modifying your home. Free consultations at 10%.
Does this sound familiar? If you're in need of assistance with your mortgage, be careful where you turn for help. Loan modification scammers will offer deals too good to be true. Learn the signs so your life won't be turned upside down. Know it, avoid it, report it. For more information or to report a scam, call 1-888-995-HOPE or visit HUD.gov/prevent-loan-scams.
As a National Guard or Reserve member, you served your country. Now let VA serve you.
I wouldn't be here today as a successful woman without the help that I received.
Your VA honors your service by providing a wide range of veterans benefits. From home loans to job training, VA benefits can help with some of life's toughest challenges.
What's important about VA benefits is they don't just touch you as an individual. They can touch your parents, maybe your grandparents, your child.
Go to benefits.va.gov/Guard Reserve to learn more, including how to apply online using e-benefits.
I just finished a master's degree recently, and now I'm working on another degree as well. So the military made that all possible. My veterans benefits made that all possible.
No matter what the time is, apply for your benefits. You earn them. VA is ready to help you.
Achieve your next mission. Learn about and apply for your VA benefits today.
Friends, David Shuster here, and all of us at We Act Radio are so proud of our neighbors here in Southeast D.C., especially one of our partners, the ARC. The ARC is at 1901 Mississippi Avenue Southeast. It's the home to some of Washington's best, including the Washington Ballet, the Levine School of Music, Boys and Girls Club, and the Children's Health Project. All provide a number of programs and services within the very same facility. The ARC is also home to the ARC Theater, the only theater east of the river, which hosts a variety of dance, music, and theatrical shows each year. Almost everything you could want is at the ARC, so stop by and see them. The ARC, 1901 Mississippi Avenue in Southeast. For more information, visit the ARC's website, www.thearcdc.org, or call 202-889-5901. The ARC, part of Southeast D.C. We Act Radio is a very proud partner of the Start at Westminster, a harm reduction, prevention, and awareness initiative sponsored by the Westminster Presbyterian Church right here in D.C. START stands for Syringe, Treatment, Advocacy, Resources, Training. These are the core elements of the harm reduction philosophy at START. The goal of this program is to reduce transmissions of HIV, hepatitis, and other bloodborne infectious diseases by empowering those at risk of infection with the tools, resources, and referrals they need to take charge of their health. Over the past year, the Start at Westminster tested over 1,600 people, and they're averaging about 150 tests each month. And of course, with the proper funding, that number could go even higher. For more information on this terrific program, go to www.startatwestminster.org. Or visit the Westminster Presbyterian Church, 400 I Street Southwest, right here in Washington, D.C.
Welcome back. This is Take Action News. I'm Karl Frisch. All weekend in this holiday between Christmas and New Year's. You're just joining us. We're talking to Jason Stanford, our good friend and the Democratic strategist, syndicated columnist, and author, about the craziest things Republicans said in 2013. Let's pick things up, Jason, with our good friend Virginia Fox, who is, what does the Fox say? Craziness. That's what the Fox says.
She's really quite special. She's something else. Look, here's what made the list for her this year. It is not the role of Congress to make college affordable and accessible.
Even though Congress sets federal student aid percentages, interest rates.
Right.
So if Congress sets those rates, isn't it, in fact, Congress's responsibility? Well, or would she rather have them? Or she would rather have them, make money off the backs of hardworking kids?
I think that might be a little closer to it. And also, just the general thing about promoting the general welfare. Isn't that kind of the gig in government? And if our economy depends on smarter kids and blah, blah, blah. But no, it's not her job. Yeah, this anti-government view they have of, let's all just get poor and stupid because it's not our job to lift us up. That's nice. And I like how, she's like one of those people that denies evolution and seems to prove her own point. I think she really does make the case that a college education might be wasted on some people just by being her.
Well, I've often wondered why anybody would take her seriously. I mean, this is a woman who is denied all sorts of reality. And I remember when she once claimed that Matthew Shepard had died in a drug-related incident, and she was so roundly ridiculed that she ended up apologizing, which was a rare day indeed. Antonin Scalia is next on the list, which is fascinating, given that he said so many crazy things this year. One of the things that he did say is, "I even believe in the devil. He's a real person." Is that because he serves with Sam Alito that he believes in the devil?
Well, I don't think we can rule that out. I don't think we can rule out that he, in fact, was trying to reveal himself there. But it just would ruin the mystery to know that Antonin Scalia is the devil. he's referring to himself in the third person, as I believe the devil would. So I think we have to consider that might have been the smartest thing the man ever said.
He also said that the Voting Rights Act was about racial entitlements earlier this year. So he's, in rare form. Who do we have next that you want to bring some attention to?
Well, let's go back. Louis Gohmert made the list twice this year. And it is really hard in this kind of year to make the list twice. I think that shows real initiative on his part. He should be commended. And this was a classic Republican case here. This just really gets to their bedrock values. And when he said, when you say it's not a man and a woman anymore, then why not have 3 men and 1 man, or 4 women and 1 man? Or why not somebody with who has a love for an animal?
Is he from a place where animals do actually verbally consent to relations? Is it that common in Texas?
It's assumed consent, really. After they leave the manger, I think they're all assumed to consent. Yeah, it wasn't until recently that bestiality was actually illegal in Texas. It hasn't been that long. There was a time when gay sex was illegal in Texas, but having sex with, say, a goat was perfectly legal here. So maybe that's where he's coming from, that he grew up with that kind of thing wasn't exactly...
I actually have it on good authority that he is the product of a human-goat relationship. And that might be why.
Well, that would explain the way his face is put together. Yes, I think that would yes. That explains a whole lot.
Now, you've also had a variety of people during these conversations we've had this year about reproductive freedom saying absolutely bonkers things. You'd think after the 2012 elections, Republicans might have learned their lesson, but you have this Alabama State Representative, Mary Sue McClurkin, which sounds like a cartoon character, saying, when a physician removes a child from a woman, that is the largest organ in a body.
Yeah. She's making laws for you, Karl. Doesn't that make you feel great?
Yeah,
now I can understand why Republicans say they don't trust government, because they know that their friends are running it. I mean, this is bad. This reminds me of that lady who was trying to defend the anti-abortion law that closed down the abortion clinics in Texas, the one that Wendy Davis was filibustering against. And she said, well, hospitals have rape kits where they can just clean all that out of you.
Right, as if that's what a rape kit is for.
Exactly, yeah. And at that point, I think she was literally locked in the back room and not allowed to talk again for the rest of the time. She was the bill's sponsor.
And towards that, and more about rape, Trent Frakes from Arizona actually said the incidents of rape resulting in pregnancy are very low. That was when he was mansplaining why abortion bans don't need rape exceptions.
Yeah, the first rule of Rape Club is don't talk about Rape Club. That should really be, their entire sensitivity training should just be that. Just shut up about rape. And they're probably a good couple of, maybe 5 points better with women if they just stop talking about rape.
One of my favorite moments this year happened this month of December, when the Republican National Committee put out a tweet that said, "Today we remember Rosa Parks' bold stand and her role in ending racism." Not a week later, the Republican National Committee held an African-American outreach event in Michigan, in Detroit, a very African-American-centric city, and the crowd that they gathered for this African-American event was largely white.
Largely white. I think that's being kind.
Nearly entirely.
There was one black dude. He was sitting in the front row. Yeah, it was not well done. Yeah.
And
I like how it was Rand Paul lecturing white people on what they should do for black people, which is nothing.
And how can we forget Don Yelton from South Carolina, who said North Carolina, who said if it hurts a bunch of lazy blacks that want the government to give them everything, so be it. When he was talking about their voter ID law, he of course lost his job. But then Steve Stockman makes another appearance on the list this year, another Texan making the list not once but twice. He says, he's even using children. It reminds me of Saddam Hussein when he used kids. And that was when he was talking about President Obama, his push for gun control after the massacre in Newtown.
Yeah, I liked how, yes, that clearly Obama was using the children to say, how about we not kill them? That's really using children, yeah. It's tortured logic, and it's best just not to look for it there.
Well, and then you've got people like that I've never heard of, like Jack Gerald, Gerard, who said the oil and gas industry gets no subsidies, zero, nothing. He is the president of the American Petroleum Institute, whose industry gets $4 billion a year in tax breaks. Is that just like chump change to them so they don't think it's that much money?
I think it's a rounding error. And, they're not really good at math anyway, so it's fine.
Speaker Boehner has had a very tough year. He said, I need this job like I need a hole in the head. At times, don't you think he has a hole in the head?
Yeah, I sometimes feel sorry for him because it's like he's the guy you didn't like but in a movie who turns out to be okay because he realizes that, he's actually with the people who are ruining it all. So that's how bad a lot of these Republicans are. Is they're making me feel sorry for John Boehner. I'm crying for him. That's his job. He's the crying guy.
Well, and if there's one politician in the Republican Party who probably belongs in Texas, but isn't in fact a Texan, that's Stephen King from Iowa, not the author. He's a congressman. And he said, it's not even the government's business to know how much money you make. That's part of freedom.
I'm going to use that with the IRS this year.
Yeah, just write your name and then put that's part of freedom.
Because freedom. Yeah, he made the list twice this year, and I think everyone remembers this quote a little bit better. For everyone who's a valedictorian, there's another 100 out there who weigh 130 pounds, and they got calves the size of cantaloupes because they're hauling 75 pounds of marijuana across the desert. This is Steve King on the DREAM Act.
And apparently Popeye is an illegal immigrant.
Exactly. Popeye's an illegal immigrant, which makes sense. He's a sailor. That's how he gets in because we don't check the ports. But, yeah, I remember when this came out and everyone swore up and down, oh, no, Steve King doesn't speak for the Republican caucus.
And yet they tried to recruit him to run for Senate. Before I let you go, I have to read this classic from Rick Perry, get your response, and then we'll have to let you go. He said, there are many states that embrace those conservative values, the approach that we've taken over the years. I'm in one, in Florida. And he said that, of course, during a speech in Louisiana. Your response?
In Louisiana. Now, yeah, I think we should give him a pass on that one. To a Texan, all other states just kind of blend together. So he was just not Texas is what he was saying, and that's fine.
Jason Stanford, Democratic strategist, syndicated columnist, and author. Happy holidays, happy new year to you and yours. Thanks again for joining us and for all the great work you've done on the show this year.
Thank you, Karl. Happy holidays.
All righty. This is Take Action News. When we come back, we'll have more great conversations with progressives that you know and love. Up next, we'll be talking to Matt Wall from the Progressive Change Campaign Committee about the future of the Democratic Party and progressives in 2014. Stick around.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Now get out there and do something.
If you're planning to replace your Social Security card simply because you don't have it, you may not need to replace it at all. What's most important is that you remember your Social Security number. Remember during school how you memorized information and answers for tests? In the same way, you should memorize your Social Security number. Knowing your number is important, but having the card may not be. If you really do need to get a replacement card to show to an employer, it's easy to apply for a new one. Find out how at www.socialsecurity.gov/SS number.
Say you want to go to college. Yay! A Big Ten college. But you don't want to feel like part of the, well, you know. Is there an answer for you? Of course. Indiana University East. Go Red Wolves! Indiana University East. You'll get the quality of a Big Ten education in a small college setting. IU East offers more than 50 fields of study, from accounting to political science, taught by internationally recognized faculty with an average of 18 students per class. So it's not, student number 95A-6273, please report to. It's more like, hey, John, welcome to class. Best of all, you'll graduate with one of the most respected degrees anywhere, a degree from IU. Don't wait. Go to iue.edu or call 800-959-EAST to arrange a visit to Indiana University East. IU. Focused on you.
Take Action News is proud to be sponsored by Healthcare for America Now. HCAN is a national coalition of more than 1,000 groups in 50 states, representing 30 million people. HCAN works to promote, defend, implement, and improve the Affordable Care Act at both the state and federal levels. They also try to protect Medicare and Medicaid, increase corporate accountability, and confront forces that seek to take away critical services. HCAN believes in creating jobs, not cutting programs people depend on. HCAN runs comprehensive issue campaigns that mobilize people at the grassroots and define the public debate. HCAN is fighting to protect, implement, and improve the new health care law through national and state-based legislative and regulatory campaigns built on grassroots action, public education, communications, policy analysis, and groundbreaking research. HCAN has become a respected voice and national leader on health care while continuing to focus on aggressive field activity. Support HCAN, Healthcare for America Now.
Hello, my name is Jim Gray, and I am a judge of the Superior Court in California and a former federal prosecutor in Los Angeles. I would like to talk to you for a moment about marijuana. Did you know that since the federal government first banned marijuana in 1937, usage in this country has actually gone up by about 4,000%? Or did you know that in the Netherlands, where adults are allowed to possess small amounts of marijuana and buy it from government-regulated businesses, fewer adults and fewer teenagers smoke marijuana than here in our country? Or that an American is arrested on marijuana charges every 38 seconds? If you are wondering if any of this makes sense, you are not alone. To find out more, contact the Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or visit them on the web at mpp.org. Thank you, and good luck to us all.
Welcome back. I'm Karl Frisch. Take Action News here, the holiday between Christmas and New Year's. Thanks for sticking around with us. It's been a big year for progressives, and especially those of the populist variety. Great champions like Elizabeth Warren in the Senate and groups like the Progressive Change Campaign Committee. We've made a lot of strides as a movement. Joining us now to talk about the year that was and what we can expect in 2014 is Matt Wall. He's the press secretary at the Progressive Change Campaign Committee. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Karl.
Alrighty, so it's been quite a year. You all have been pushing hard to make certain that progressives stand up for the expansion and protection and expansion of Social Security and Medicare. And you've even gotten into some tussles with those within our own, those who consider themselves to be from our own side of the aisle. Tell us about the Progressive Change Campaign's efforts of late concerning Third Way.
Right. So,
and for folks that don't know, Third Way is a organization that considers itself to be a policy think tank, and they make a lot of news when they're advocating for things that you'd expect to see from a Republican think tank.
Exactly. And a lot of that goes back to the fact that Third Way's funding, a lot of it comes from Wall Street and the financial district. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself.
Right.
So this summer, we launched with Tom Harkin, Senator from Iowa, and Mark Begich, Senator from Alaska, this idea that we should be expanding Social Security. They introduced the bills in the Senate, and then soon thereafter, bills came out in the House. And the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, along with our allies at Democracy for America, MoveOn.org, Social Security Works, and others, were really building grassroots support for this bill and for these proposals. It was actually getting so much support with Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio signing on, and then Elizabeth Warren going to the floor of the Senate and speaking out for expanding Social Security and talking about the retirement crisis, that the folks on Wall Street, the folks in Third Way, which is backed by Wall Street and big corporations, got really worried. They were like, this idea is getting too popular. So they took to the pages of the Wall Street Journal, ever a bastion of liberalism, if there ever was one, and penned an op-ed saying that, this idea of expanding Social Security is Exhibit A in the liberal fantasy of, what we should be doing. And that economic populism, as a general concept, is a losing proposition for Democrats going forward.
Well, and towards that end, maybe you can get into this. You all circulated petitions to hold Third Way accountable after they published the op-ed in the Wall Street Journal attacking Elizabeth Warren and this idea that we should have retirement and economic security. And when you delivered the petition, it was quite interesting. It was a big deal. They actually came down to greet you all.
Oh, absolutely. So we organized this petition delivery with our friends over at Social Security Works and a few other allies, and we brought over 125,000 signature petitions to Third Way, demanding that they stop attacking Elizabeth Warren and create transparency about who's funding these attacks, making it make it clear that your money's coming from Wall Street. We all know it is, but you're being really opaque about it.
And they said what? I mean, they come downstairs, they're standing there next to Adam Green, one of the co-founders of the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, in kind of a weird moment where Adam is basically just able to ask him a bunch of questions. And Bennett from Third Way just fesses up and says, yeah, most of our money comes from Wall Street.
Yep. One of the co-founders, Matt Bennett, he's also a vice president over at Third Way, came down because he saw a huge crowd that was outside and started talking to the people there. And in this side conversation that, reporters were actually watching, and Alex Lawson from Social Security Works was there as well, he admitted that, contrary to what he'd been saying before, as reported in the New York Times and New Yorker, that, a very small percent came from Wall Street, he admitted that a majority of their financial support came from the financial, sector, came from Wall Street bankers, came from all the people listed on their board of trustees, where it's, Wall Street banker, financial investor, Wall Street banker. And, then Adam was like, all right, you said 1% before, essentially. Can you give us a ballpark now for how much it is? And, Matt Bennett didn't want to get into a percentage.
But he did say a majority.
He said a majority. He knew he had...
I have a strong suspicion that it's more like a supermajority. So in the year ahead, 2014, what will the PCCC be doing to continue this campaign, and what races are you looking at to win for progressives who have the same values?
Right. So one race I want to actually highlight in particular is Kelly Westland in Wisconsin's 7th District. She is running against Sean Duffy, who was known, I believe, as the shutdown congressman for his big role in, the government shutdown that happened in the beginning of October.
I call him the real world congressman because of his, we wouldn't even know who he was if it wasn't for MTV, but that's another story. So she's taking on him, which is great.
And she's running her campaign on the idea of economic populism. And so, that's the type of candidate that we want to run in 2014. We want candidates that will run on economic populism, will look at Elizabeth Warren and say, she has winning ideas. I want to run on those ideas. I want to run on expanding Social Security. I want to run on making sure that we hold Wall Street accountable and we have real reform to make sure we don't go through another financial crisis. We have reform for student loans. Elizabeth Warren proposed a bill this year. It didn't end up becoming law, but it really changed the conversation to being about, do we want to be profiting off loans we give to students, or do we want to make it about making students have more opportunities to go to college and get an education? So, those are the issues that I see really percolating to the top of the conversation in 2014, expanding Social Security, Wall Street reform, student loans, and Elizabeth Warren just actually proposed a bill this week talking about how financial records like credit reports shouldn't be used in the hiring process.
Right.
We shouldn't have folks disqualified because, they had a major medical incident and they took a hit on their credit. So, these bold populist ideas, these economic populist ideas, it's really going to be what's driving the conversation for progressives in 2014.
Well, and we'll see. I'm sure that you all will be supporting many more candidates in the new year. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Matt Wall, I want to thank you for joining us and wish you a happy new year and all your friends and co-workers over at the Progressive Change Campaign Committee as well. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Karl.
Alrighty, when we come back, we're going to talk to political satirist Andy Cobb about the Festivus tree and Satanists in Oklahoma. OKLAHOMA. Stick around, okay?
Education beyond high school, a path to opportunity and success for our young people, and the key to building a better life for themselves and ultimately their own children. But for many, all this is only a dream, because the challenge of paying for education beyond high school seems to put this opportunity out of reach. But there is an organization that can help. Each year we award $80 billion in grants, low-interest loans, and work-study to students in colleges, trade schools, and professional schools. We are Federal Student Aid, part of the U.S. Department of Education. You can learn more by logging on to federalstudentAid.ed.gov. We may be able to help you realize your dreams, so don't get left behind. After all, the most costly education is the one not begun. Federal Student Aid. Start here, go further.
Jeff, I'm home.
Hey, Mom.
So, what did you do today? I noticed the dishes are still in the sink.
I've been busy.
Getting your taxes done like we talked about?
Oh, I got my friend Dave on that. Hey, he's only charging $20.
Not Dave from your high school class who graduated 3 years late.
Yeah, he's good with numbers. Won our fantasy football league last year.
Jeff, I can't believe you would actually take your...
Kidding, Mom. I took all my paperwork over to that preparer just like you recommended.
Using a paid tax preparer this year? Visit irs.gov for some do's and don'ts. Like look for a preparer who has a preparer tax ID number and signs your return. Check out their qualifications and review your tax return before you sign it.
Oh, Jeff, why do you do this to me?
Mom, you're just so easy.
irs.gov. It's the best tax tip of all.
Hello everyone, I'm Daniel Marins, and I'm here to talk to you about Take Action News with David Shuster. Every week we talk politics, government, and what you can do to take action. David Shuster talks with today's leading political minds.
Valerie, so many people will know your name, know your story because of those dastardly actions by the Bush administration to try to discredit your husband, who called them out for their lies that led up to the Iraq War. And in so going after him, they leaked your name. 10 years since the start of the Iraq War. Has your perspective on any of this changed? Do you still carry around any sort of anger or frustration to the Bush administration? How have you been dealing with it all these years?
Until the right is able to come to terms with the reality that we were lied into this war and it was not a good idea and it wasn't to liberate the Iraqi people, they will just continue to live in, la-la land and perpetuate the lies that got us into the war in the first place.
Tune in from noon to 3 p.m. every Saturday, right here on We Act Radio.
When our daughter Ava was 4, we noticed she didn't talk much. A genetic test revealed that she had hearing loss caused by 2 mutated genes. One she inherited from myself, the other from her dad. If it weren't for the amazing people at U of M, we might have never known the true cause of Ava's hearing loss or how to properly treat it.
The University of Michigan C.S. Mott Children's Hospital is one of only a handful of hospitals in the world researching genetic hearing loss in addition to treating it. Our breakthrough research and advanced treatments combined with outstanding care help us change children's lives in extraordinary ways. For the leaders and best in pediatric care, call a Mott Patient Advisor at 877-475-MOTT or visit mottchildren.org.
She is more talkative now and more social. She loves music now. She's humming to the music, and it's sweet to actually hear her humming.
To learn more, call 877-475-MOTT.
They not only helped us find answers, they helped Ava find her voice.
That's the Michigan difference.
Welcome back. This is Take Action News. So I don't know if you're following this story out of Louisiana, I believe it is. Oklahoma. Of course, there's a difference. Just further into this bizarre, just strange war on Christmas, war on the holidays, kind of baloney. There is a Festivus tree, for those of you that don't remember following the Festivus story over on Seinfeld back in the day. So in Oklahoma, there's a law that says that if one religion is going to, have a display on government property, then another can do so as well. So folks in Oklahoma wanted a Festivus tree on the lawn of a government facility in Oklahoma. And so there is a Festivus tree, and it's made out of PBR cans. And when I say tree, I actually mean it's a pole. I should say it's a pole. So it got so much news that the Seinfeld writer who wrote about it, and because it was so controversial, the right wing was so apoplectic about it, the Seinfeld writer who came up with the Festivus tree, which is a fake holiday, obviously, where the symbol is a secular pushback against religious dominion over American public life, or something like that. Anyways, the Wisconsin and Florida state capitals currently have Festivus poles on display. To the uninitiated, a Festivus pole is a key component in the celebration of Festivus, a bizarre and agonizing December 23rd holiday made famous by The Strike, an episode from 1997 of Seinfeld. Since the episode aired, the holiday has taken on a life of its own. House Majority Leader Eric Cantor has thrown Festivus fundraisers, for example, and at the Florida Capitol in Tallahassee on Wednesday, self-proclaimed militant atheist activist Chaz Stevens erected a 6-foot Festivus pole made out of empty Pabst Blue Ribbon cans in the State House Rotunda in protest of the privately funded nativity scene at the state capitol. Harry Mayett, who is a religious liberty law firm, Liberty Counsel, using the words religious liberty loosely, called Stevens' views extreme and his display offensive. Quote, "Is this how PC we've gotten in our society? Really?" Fox News host Gretchen Carlson, a dim bulb if there ever was one, said on Tuesday, "I am so outraged by this. Why do I have to drive around with my kids to look for nativity scenes and be like, oh yeah, kids, look, there's baby Jesus behind the Festivus pole made out of beer cans." Joining us now to talk about the Festivus for the rest of us and all these other crazy shenanigans going on this holiday season is our good friend Andy Kopp. Andy, thanks for joining us.
What's happening, Karl?
This is just bonkers. Pardon?
Happy Festivus to you.
Thank you. To you as well. So walk us through this craziness. It seems like the right wing spends more time worried about the celebration of Christmas than they do actually celebrating Christmas.
Yeah. It seems to be the outrage over this stuff has become an intramural sport on the right, and I encourage it. Frankly, I think we need to do all we can to feed this fervor. So there's this Festivus pole that's been made out of beer cans, and it's being placed in these capitals. I think this is a great idea.
It's made out of PBR cans, and if I have a problem with it, it's just because it's such a hipster beer.
It's going to collect neckbeards are going to be hanging around.
Right, listening to Arcade Fire's Christmas album.
Comparing their World of Warcraft notes. There's going to be a lot of people hanging out. It's going to attract undesirables. But what we need to do is continue this theme of creating items of worship out of television shows, because this was originally a Seinfeld
right
subplot, and this is exactly what we need to do. Let's start flooding state government with these items of worship. You know what springs to mind for a lot of these locations, Karl, is Breaking Bad. If we could establish a meth lab in every state capital, a lot of these folks aren't going to know whether to worship or use. And
there might actually be meth labs that we could use at many of these state capitals.
You think so? You think that Alabama might have a few freaking meth labs we can have around?
Is there any other reason for a state legislator to have a double wide?
Not in my book, Karl. And I'll tell you what. If we can really flood these places with enough items of worship, folks aren't going to know how to respond. It's going to be like walking into an entire pagan display because everything's a worshipable.
Well, and here's my question: do you think the Christian God smiles or frowns on people who are so insecure in their own faith of Him that they get upset by other people's faith?
I don't know what the Christian God looks like anymore, Karl.
He's white like Megyn Kelly.
If the Christian God looked a little bit like Megyn Kelly, it might bring slime balls like me to church more often. That's the sad reality of
They
it.
both show a little leg.
That's right, but they act so shocked. It's like this Duck Dynasty thing. Like you're familiar with this Duck Dynasty.
Oh yes,
here,
of course.
And A&E.
Look, and I'm not judging this Phil Robertson Christian guy or the Klan or neo-Nazis or duck screwing bestiality supporters. I'm going to let God judge those people.
Yeah.
I'm not comparing him to those things. I'm just saying.
Absolutely not, Karl. You're just asking the important questions.
Right.
And I love that everyone acts so shocked that these guys turn out to be a bunch of xenophobic homophobes. I mean, who would have saw that coming from this crowd?
I thought they, frankly, I've never seen the show. I assumed it was something about a ZZ Top cover band.
It's like going to a Klan meeting and being like, who invited all the jerks?
I was sure this was just the White Party by Ralph Lauren.
They look like exactly the kind of hipsters that would be attracted by a Festivus pole. So maybe we're learning the true meaning of Christmas here. I don't know.
Well, you can hide a lot of skeletons and beards like that. That's for sure.
Oh, if you try. And it seems like if you apply their concerns. I mean, all this is about a war on Christmas, right?
Right.
That's all this started. And they can't do this to me because I know what happens through government around Christmas because I went to public schools.
Right.
And in public schools, you couldn't be more into Christmas if you were an elf.
I had art projects that were Christian based.
You have what?
I had art projects that were Christian based in public school.
Oh yeah, draw the Savior. Absolutely, it's like a little denominational training camp.
Everybody's going to draw Christmas trees. Jews, you can draw trees too. Just call them something else. So what other shows do you think we should incorporate into our holiday celebrations?
Oh man, I think that pretty much most of the network lineup should be included, which will mean that CBS will have these mystery displays that no one will know what they are. Nobody's watching CBS. Nobody watches that. Don't worry.
No, it'll be like, what's that NCIS holiday about? I don't know. I know everybody celebrates it, but I don't know what it's about.
And we've got a resurrected TV character in Brian the Dog on Family Guy. Let's celebrate his resurrection every year. There's so much to work with.
Well, maybe they can do something with Carrie from Homeland. You go off your psychotropic meds and you start having visions.
Absolutely. Let's get a vision quest going on in the state legislature.
Well, for many of them, it seems as if they are part of this. And how much of this is just them, trying to play the victim role? It's like, I can't believe that everybody's so anti-Christian, even though we control all levers of government.
Yeah. These poor oppressed Christians, because nobody has mentioned Christmas to me all year. I have no idea when it is this year.
Actually, it starts in March, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, March to December 26th is the Christmas season now. Yeah, if this is a war on Christmas, we are doing a terrible job of it. We have really screwed the pooch on defeating Christmas.
What are you looking forward to most in the new year? Are you going to wage a war on the new year?
Now that's a war that I could get behind. Yeah, Karl, I quit drinking a couple years ago, and the last thing I need every year is someone coming around reminding me how much fun drinking is.
Well, it's usually people who have no business drinking. It's always the amateurs that drink on New Year's, 4th of July, and St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, the chumps. As someone who's spent a lot of time in bars, that's the worst time to be in a bar. Plastic cups? Drinking Miller Lite out of plastic cups? Who are you people?
Well, maybe they're trying to get those cans empty so that they can build their Festivus pole.
That's right. Hakuna Matata. It all comes around.
Another holiday.
Oh, man, that's the Festivus for the rest of us that I'm talking about.
Well, they probably assume it's Barack Obama's because it sounds vaguely Kenyan. All right, Andy Cobb. I want to thank you for coming on the show today. It's always a pleasure. Do you have any New Year's resolutions you want to share with us?
My New Year's resolution is to spread the Festivus cheer far and wide and keep it in my heart well beyond December 25th. It's a year-round holiday.
I mean, there is a war on Festivus, and we've just got to be ready for it.
That's right. Have some beer cans ready to throw people.
All right. Go to his website, andycobbonline.com. Andy Cobb, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Karl.
All right, this is Take Action News. I'm Karl Frisch, here all weekend this holiday between Christmas and New Year's. And when we come back in the next hour, we're going to hear from the folks at Media Matters about the misinformer of the year and some of the worst media hatchet jobs of 2013. Stick around, you won't want to miss it.
Hey there, Matthew Filipovich here, host of the creatively titled Matthew Filipovich Show, which, by the way, you can hear every single Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. right here on 1480 a.m. We Act Radio. Now, I'm going to be honest with you people, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I like talking to smart people who are smarter than me, some of the smartest, funniest, most badass progressives out there. People like Glenn Greenwald, Naomi Klein, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, Jamie Kilstein, Allison Kilkenny, Alan Grayson, Jeremy Scahill, Jim Hightower, and more. That's right, I said more. Don't believe me? Well, tune into the Matthew Filipovich Show every single Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. for some of the best in liberal talk, news, comedy, and interviews right here on 1480 a.m. We Act Radio.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Now get out there and do something.
How is the National Security Agency tracking you?
I'm Baratunde Thurston from The Onion, and also, mother. You're listening to the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
It is collecting all the data about who you call and when and in what order and the location you were in, as well as all that information on the people you contacted and all those who were near you when you spoke or texted or emailed or searched the web, and all the data from any and all of those people as well. This so-called metadata gives law enforcement and bureaucrats a clear picture about you, who you associate with, what you think, what you do, who you do it with, and when you do it. The government says it can keep that information forever and use it however it wants to. All of this on totally law-abiding citizens suspected of no wrongdoing whatsoever. Fortunately, Federal District Court Judge Richard Leon has ruled that the government can't do this, that it's unconstitutional, a violation of the Fourth Amendment guarantee against unreasonable searches and seizures to place every American under permanent surveillance. Hopefully, Judge Leon's decision, which won't actually take effect until after all the appeals are completed, will be upheld by the United States Supreme Court. Hopefully, the Congress will pass the USA Freedom Act, which will roll back the national security state. Meanwhile, the government's position on constant surveillance of all of us? Yes, we can.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
Have you ever heard of the rabbit hunter's nightmare? A guy dreams that he and a few of his buddies have fanned out across some brushland to scare up and shoot a few hares. They kill a couple, but then one of the hunting buddies who had headed down a slope into a thicket on the right suddenly comes bolting up the slope, all wild-eyed and screaming at the others, "Run, run, the rabbits have guns!" I thought of this recalibration of the hunting equation when I read that an outfit called the Dallas Safari Club had come up with a truly novel idea for saving Namibia's rare black rhinoceros, which is teetering on the edge of extinction. Several 100,000 of these unique animals existed a century ago, but only 1,800 remain in this African nation today. So, thinking way out of the box, the Safari Club says it will contribute to the black rhino conservation cause by auctioning off to one of the club's lucky members the chance to, warning, the following could make your head explode, go to Namibia with a really big gun and shoot one of the magnificent endangered creatures dead. Yes, to save the black rhino, kill it. The Safari Club's chieftain says that both the Namibian government and our own Fish and Wildlife Agency have okayed the kill. He claims that safari enthusiasts will bid as much as $1 million to be the one to pull the trigger. And yes, the head of the deceased will be severed, stuffed, mounted, and shipped back to the U.S. as a trophy for the shooter's den. To the club's credit, every dime from the auction will go to, oh the irony, Namibia's Black Rhino Conservation Fund. This is Jim Hightower saying, back to that rabbit scenario. Wouldn't the club's big game safari be fairer if high-powered guns were barred and the winning bidder had to try executing the rhino with a Swiss Army knife? Yeah, he could use the scissor blade, he could use the screwdriver, any blade he chose.
If you like these feisty pops of populism that Hightower zings out on the airwaves, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter provides the in-depth lowdown on what the greed heads of Wall Street and the boneheads of Washington are doing to us behind the scenes. With Hightower's saucy Texas humor and truth-telling populist perspective, the lowdown literally can lift you up. And get this, you can have the lowdown delivered to your mailbox or email each month for only $15 a year. Yes, 12 issues, only $15. Check it out. HightowerLowdown.org.
Packers.
Vikings. We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown. We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full. But when we live united, we make a real difference in the building blocks of life. Children succeed in school, families gain financial stability, the health of our neighbors improves, and suddenly so do our communities. Real change won't happen without you.
Live united.
So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up today at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. Nearly 800 locked-out nurses and healthcare techs at New London, Connecticut's L&M Hospital will return to work today. The unilateral decision by hospital administrators to end the lockout came even as resumed talks have failed to reach an agreement on the core issue, patient care delivery at the hospital. The healthcare workers are returning to work under the terms of their union contracts that expired November 16th. The AFT locals representing the nurses and healthcare techs say their resolve is stronger than ever to reach an agreement on patient care delivery issues. AFT Connecticut spokesperson Matt O'Connor.
This really is a step in the right direction for the community. It was a win by members who pulled together and stood strong in the face of tremendous adversity and enormous onslaught by the administration of the hospital that they serve, and they really did so through their own solidarity and through the support of the community.
Corporate media has pounded away at how upset people were who got health insurance cancellation notices related to the Affordable Care Act health insurance reform. You may not have heard these stories, though. Here are just a few of the people nationwide who found that the Obamacare policies replacing those the insurance companies canceled are actually better and much less expensive. Sue Spanky, a self-employed artist in her 50s in Missoula, Montana, was paying $350 a month with a $5,000 deductible when her policy was canceled. She got a new one for $40 a month with a $500 deductible. In Lancaster, Pennsylvania, 58-year-old Lori Lapman went from a canceled plan costing her $520 a month to one that cost just $111.73. The Patriot News in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania also reported that Lynn Keltz saved $80 a month when her plan was canceled and she found a new one under the Obamacare exchanges. Supporters of the health care reform say while some people will have to pay more for their policies, they will mostly be more affluent people. When the new year dawns, right-wing groups in 34 states will begin launching coordinated attacks on public sector worker pensions and wages, environmental safeguards, and health care, among other issues. First reported in the Guardian newspaper, documents obtained by the paper show that the state policy network, funded by $83 million from the likes of the billionaire Koch brothers, big tobacco and pharmaceutical companies, plans media campaigns and political action to push so-called model legislation for moneyed interests. According to the documents, this will include attacks on public worker pensions in Arizona, Colorado, Minnesota, New Jersey, Missouri, and Pennsylvania. Opposition to Medicaid expansion to deny health insurance to more people in poverty will be launched in Georgia, North Carolina, Texas, and Utah by the State Policy Network. Attacks on union rights and public workers are also planned for Delaware and Nevada. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
American citizens everywhere are demanding and supporting speedy and complete action.
Broadcasting from the We Act Radio studios in Washington, D.C., heard live across the nation, this is Take Action News with Karl Frisch.
Many of the world's great movements of thought and action
have flowed from the work of a single man.
There is work to be done. The state of our economy calls for action, bold and swift, and we will act.
We will take action when action is required.
Welcome back. This is Take Action News. I'm Karl Frisch. This holiday weekend between Christmas and New Year's. Thanks for joining us. Lots of big stories this year. Lots of problematic stories this year. Thankfully, the good folks at Media Matters for America, which you can find at MediaMatters.org, have been on the beat all year long, correcting misinformation wherever it happens to be. Joining us now is Eric Bowler. He's a senior fellow at Media Matters, friend of the show. And we're going to chat a little bit about some of the bigger problematic storylines this year. And in the next segment, we will talk about Media Matters Misinformer of the Year. Eric Bowler, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Karl, how are you?
I am swell. So, without giving away the Misinformer of the Year, which we'll hold to the next segment, why don't you talk to us about some of the bigger problematic stories or storylines that you saw this year?
Well, the storyline, my pet peeve all year, has been sort of how the press has been covering Obama vis-a-vis Republican obstruction.
Right.
And this goes back to Rush Limbaugh announcing in January of 2009, I hope he fails. And so from the very beginning, Republicans have adopted this sort of radical strategy of not just opposing the White House agenda, but really trying to grind the government to a halt, most notably with the government shutdown, forcing the president to essentially repeal the centerpiece of his first term, something that had absolutely no chance of happening. But so,
and from a purely nonpartisan, non-ideological perspective, there are even conservatives who have been willing to grant that, yes, it's true, Republicans are the problem here. I mean, Norm Ornstein is no liberal. In fact, he works at a conservative think tank, and he wrote the book on this subject.
Yeah, and he and his writing partner were one of the few, I think, that really came forward, and they wrote that, in the past, when it's been the problem of both parties, we've said so, but they wrote in a Washington Post op-ed piece, look, it's the Republicans' fault. They spelled it, they know more about how Congress works than almost anybody. And they spelled out, we have never seen this before. And so it's been going on for 5 years, and my problem with the press is that, they continually blame Obama for the Republican obstruction. It started with the most obvious example was the gun vote in April. This was a bill that was supported by 90% of Americans. It came in the wake of a national tragedy. This is what Congress does when these things happen. They pass some sort of law to try to address. And in this case, it was a very minimal, almost symbolic law about background checks. And Republicans filibustered it. I mean, they refused the vote. And right away, the press started pointing to that as an example of an Obama failure. After the shooting at the Navy Yard, they looked back and they said there was a failure of Obama not to get any gun laws passed. And now when they're doing their year-end roundups, if you look at all of them, virtually every one includes, pointing to the gun vote. So Obama, used the leverage of his office. He lobbied intensely.
Republicans wouldn't even allow a compromise bill to get through.
Right.
I mean, It wasn't even a tough bill. It was the Manchin-Toomey bill was a compromise bill that did a lot to protect the gun industry.
Right. And afterwards, Senator Toomey sort of pulled back the curtain. He said, "This didn't pass. This is the Republican who, in a sort of a rare bout of bipartisanship this year, worked with Democrats, worked with the White House for this compromise gun bill." And afterward, he told CNN, he said, "It didn't pass because there are people in my party who don't want Obama to succeed." So this has absolutely nothing to do with public policy. It has nothing to do. The only thing it had to do.
In fact, I believe somebody said that Mitch McConnell had specifically said he didn't want the president to succeed.
And we hear more and more of them. And Laura Ingraham, I think about a month ago, is saying that the job of conservatives is to make sure Obama is not an effective president. Now, people might say, "Well, wait a minute. This is a two-party system. This is how it always works."
Fine, but cover it as such. cover what's happening.
But that's not how it works. I mean, you go back to George W. Bush. You know, he had to be appointed president by the Supreme Court. What was his first? One of his first legislative initiatives was education. No child left behind.
Democrats helped him.
Liberal icon Ted Kennedy steps forward and says, "I'm going to pass it for you."
Right.
So he delivered the Democrat. So it's
and that's just one example. I mean, there were numerous legislative. One thing that's always been interesting to me is this notion that it is far easier for a Republican president to work with a Democratic Congress because a president can only largely achieve things only through legislative action. And Democrats are more than willing to be legislators.
Yeah, that's what they came to Washington for.
Right. The opposite is not true. So you see things like this Chris Matthews book where it's like, oh, Tip used to work with Reagan. Well, yeah, because it was a Democratic Congress working with a Republican president. Democrats will work in Congress with either party as president to get things done.
Right. Democrats have never gone to Washington to sort of grind the gears to a halt the way Republicans and the faction of the Tea Party have. And they've never sort of done this out of, they've never tried to, govern out of spite. I mean, either they'll work with the opposition or they'll lose the vote. I mean, look at immigration reform. Again, another rare bout of bipartisanship in the Senate. Passes with 68 votes, which today, unless you're renaming post offices, it doesn't happen. So it goes to the House. We've got 25, 26, 27, whatever the count of Republicans who have said they'll pass it. So there's enough votes to pass it. It busted the filibuster. There's a working majority in the House, and Boehner won't allow a vote. And that's being portrayed in the press as, they just can't get along. Or, boy, this gridlock. It's not gridlock. This is just radical obstructionism. And again,
Well, and how many times,
two quick things. A, the press gives Republicans a pass. This is just gridlock and they can't get along. And then on the flip side, they blame Obama. So it's Obama's fault that Republicans are acting in a radical, unprecedented manner.
And speaking of unprecedented, we have to watch people be shocked as Republicans push us to the debt limit, shock as they shut down the government, and yet it's still Obama's fault. Absolutely fascinating. Probably the biggest scandal of the year as far as I'm concerned. But in the next segment, I hope you'll stick around with us. We are going to talk about Media Matters' annual Misinformer of the Year. And if you think it's Fox News, you're wrong. Eric Bollert, thanks for joining us, and we'll chat with you after this break.
Sergeant Michelle Garcia served meritoriously in Iraq and has the medals to prove it. Soon after leaving the Navy, Lieutenant Chris Scott found a job, a home, and started a family of his own. Corpsman Richard Stokely took the skills he learned in Vietnam and put them to good use as a paramedic. But soon after leaving the military, each of these veterans fell on hard times and faced homelessness. Even after Michelle lost all her savings, even after Chris wasn't able to pay his mortgage, and even after Richard battled alcoholism for years, they each reached out for help when they needed it most. A simple phone call put them in touch with a trained professional from the Department of Veterans Affairs. That call got Michelle a place to stay until she could afford one of her own, put Chris in touch with employment assistance, and found Richard a substance abuse program. These veterans are success stories not only for how they were able to help others while serving their country, but for how they were able to let others help them. If you know of or are a veteran in need, make the call.
When you go on a road trip, you're careful. You follow the signs to arrive at the right place. It's the same online. Read the internet signs along the way, or you may be led astray. For example, look for the .gov at the end of the web address. If it isn't .gov, it isn't the real Social Security website. People are often victimized by misleading advertisers who use terms like Social Security or Medicare to trick the public. These companies charge a fee for free Social Security services. These services include changing your name and getting a new Social Security card. There's no need to pay for services Social Security offers for free. Go to www.socialsecurity.gov. And remember, if it isn't .gov, it isn't Social Security.
Would you like to secure stable employment, affordable, high-quality child care, or an opportunity to serve your community through meaningful volunteer and internship experiences? If so, UPO is the place for you. Hello, I'm Andrea Thomas, Vice President of Administration and Chief of Staff for UPO. As the Community Action Agency for Washington, D.C., UPO has proudly served the residents of Washington for the past 50 years. Annually, we impact the lives of nearly 100,000 Washingtonians, 100,000 people advancing their education, securing employment, maintaining housing stability, and investing in their communities through volunteerism. Our vision is a Washington of thriving communities and self-sufficient residents. To learn more about our services and how you can partner with us or donate, visit us at www.upo.org. UPO, where we are uniting people with opportunities.
Take Action News is proud to be sponsored by Healthcare for America Now. HCAN is a national coalition of more than 1,000 groups in 50 states, representing 30 million people. HCAN works to promote, defend, implement, and improve the Affordable Care Act at both the state and federal levels. They also try to protect Medicare and Medicaid, increase corporate accountability, and confront forces that seek to take away critical services. HCAN believes in creating jobs, not cutting programs people depend on. HCAN runs comprehensive issue campaigns that mobilize people at the grassroots and define the public debate. HCAN is fighting to protect, implement, and improve the new health care law through national and state-based legislative and regulatory campaigns built on grassroots action, public education, communications, policy analysis, and groundbreaking research. HCAN has become a respected voice and national leader on health care while continuing to focus on aggressive field activity. Support HCAN, Healthcare for America Now.
Welcome back. Take Action News. Karl Frisch here. All weekend this holiday weekend between Christmas and New Year's. Still with us is Eric Bollert, Senior Fellow at Media Matters for America. Eric, every year Media Matters for America announces the Misinformer of the Year. Tell us about the award, and then let us know who the Misinformer of 2013 is.
The Misinformer, we've been doing this is the 9th year, and it's someone we just feel that really was particularly awful this year and particularly bad with the misinformation front. And 7 of the 9 times it's been right-wing media, Rush Limbaugh, Glenn Beck, Bill O'Reilly. But this year, for only the second time, it's a mainstream news outlet, and it's CBS News because of the Benghazi hoax that they tried to pull this fall. Mainly because of the Benghazi hoax, but as we detail in our piece, there was a fairly awful 60 Minutes piece on Social Security disability. They caught a lot of flack just recently over this, completely one-sided look at the NSA surveillance. Their health care coverage, particularly, the cancellation horror stories were pretty bad.
Eric, let's unpack some of this because it's certainly interesting when an organization like CBS News, I mean, this is an outlet, a news entity that has a storied history of great journalism. Walk us through the more problematic pieces. Obviously, the Benghazi hoax that they perpetrated, but also these other pieces.
Yeah, sure. The Benghazi hoax was, as most people know, this was this Laura Logan piece on 60 Minutes that purported to, have all kinds of new information, and they interviewed this quote-unquote witness, Dylan Davis, who was a private security guard working in the city, who claims he witnessed the terror attack and scaled a 12-foot wall and knocked out a terrorist with the butt of his rifle, etc. And it turns out he wasn't there. He told his employee afterwards that he was miles away. He never got near the U.S. compound. He told the FBI agents who interviewed him, I can't help you, I wasn't there. But then he changed his tune, and he signed a nice, juicy book contract with a right-wing publisher. And somehow he got CBS, this storied news entity, to bite on this story. And
did it hurt the fact that CBS also owns the publisher that was publishing his fake book?
Right, which they forgot to mention. And clearly it seems pretty clear they were trying to buy into this, right-wing media noise machine and culture. And they knew it would create some buzz. And the night before and the weekend before, they were getting all kinds of free advertising and marketing on the right-wing blogs. The next day, Fox News spent a combined nearly 1 hour hyping the CBS report, how wonderful it was. Lindsey Graham went on Fox and was talking about this fantastic, CBS report, and he was so angry about the 60 Minutes report, he was going to block every appointment and every nominee the Obama administration put forward because 60 Minutes had uncovered the truth. Well, it was a fraud and it was a hoax. And they should have never done the piece because it was tied around this completely debunked theory that there are, quote, lingering questions. Only, Darrell Issa and Sean Hannity actually think there are still lingering questions. So Fox, listen to me, I'm talking about Fox. CBS News got lured into this. They thought it would be an easy hit. What's the best way to prove you're not part of the liberal media? You wallow in this mud for a Sunday, and then in the future you can say, "Oh, we did that Benghazi report." So the whole thing blew up. The witness was a phony. CBS stuck with the story for about 10 days until they had no recourse and had to concede the whole.
Well, and ultimately, it's probably more damaging when an outlet like CBS falls for these right-wing hoaxes hook, line, and sinker, because people watching at home are going to be much more trusting of a legitimate news outlet than they are of Fox News.
Oh, absolutely, and and that's.
Even the Fox News guys were saying, "Hey, if CBS reports it, it must be real," as if they couldn't rely on their own name.
Right. So they completely legitimized it, and that's why Fox and the right wing media was so excited. It's like, oh, we finally converted CBS. They're going to provide us cover. They're going to provide us legitimacy. In the end, CBS ironically basically buried, for all intents and purposes, buried the Benghazi story, just like CBS buried, in the 2004 campaign. They inadvertently buried the story about George Bush and whether he served out his National Guard duty. And that was the last time CBS really found itself under this kind of extraordinary...
Well, and because of this scrutiny, there's these other issues that you brought up that we've seen with CBS's reporting.
Yeah, so let's and a lot of it was just in the in the span of 4, 5, 6 weeks. Steve Cross aired this just awful one-sided piece about Social Security disability, told entirely through the prism of a crusading Republican senator who claimed basically Social Security disability was some sort of welfare program, and everyone's cashing in on the government, and there's all kinds.
And by the way, Paul Ryan went to college on Social Security disability.
Oh, is that right? Good
yeah.
point. And leaving out the fact that the rate for acceptance is way down. It's incredibly hard to get Social Security disability. In fact, Social Security disability advocates, knew CBS was working on this, and they reached out to 60 Minutes, and they basically implored them, please do a balanced piece. And they did the opposite. So it was this total, again, sort of like Benghazi, just this blinded sort of one-sided piece, told exclusively from the perspective of a Republican senator's office up in D.C. And then some of the healthcare coverage was really bad. The horror stories that CBS, particularly CBS This Morning, was pushing turned out to be completely debunked. And then during all of this, Cheryl Atkinson, the sort of darling of the right-wing media, she, spent years chasing, the supposed scandal of Fast and Furious, and she's been a big hyper of Benghazi. So she gets this leaked partial transcript from Darrell Issa, and this has to do with the rollout of healthcare reform.
Right.
And she goes on the air knowing she doesn't even have the full transcript, knowing, I'm sure, that Darrell Issa, who's not the most honest guy, as Media Matters has pointed out, is not telling her the full story. And she goes with this totally bogus story about a top Obama administration official knew that the website wasn't safe and people could lose their identity and all this stuff. Well, the next day we find out what the entire transcript was, and the administration official was being asked about something that was going to be implemented in 2014. had nothing to do with the rollout of Obamacare this year. And the fact that someone like Cheryl Atkinson, after that, still has a job, and Laura Logan is coming back, and this and this NSA story, which was just completely slammed as almost embarrassing, propaganda. You step back and you look and you say, what is going on at CBS News? What are they trying to do? Every one of these stories just sort of is a train wreck in the wrong direction. All of it is just sort of spouting out Republican misinformation.
Well, and in the new year,
you kind of wonder, what is their game plan here?
Well, and at the end of this year, Media Matters announced that the war on Fox was essentially over. Right. Different, not over, but different.
Right.
And that they had been effectively, neutered as a vehicle of spreading misinformation far beyond the right-wing base. And that Media Matters would now be focusing even more intensely on these so-called legitimate news outlets. You expect that to result in a lot of big things like the CBS controversy in the coming year?
Yeah, I think so. And then, we're going to look at new media, and we're going to look at Spanish language media. My Twitter feed sort of exploded from all these trolls who follow me saying, how can Media Matters have won the war, and they just send me endless links to their ratings, how great their ratings was, which wasn't the point. In 2009, Anita Dunn at the White House led sort of this little crusade to point out Fox was not a legitimate news organization. The White House doesn't really have to treat Fox as legitimate, and the mainstream DC press freaked out. They said, how can the White House say Fox News isn't legitimate? How can they make that? We have friends at Fox News. They're professionals. I guarantee you, if you did a poll now, 4 years later, virtually no one in the D.C. press corps would raise their hand and defend Fox News. Everyone sees it as a propaganda outlet. And thanks to Megyn Kelly last week with this winter with Megyn, Santa and Jesus are white, it became a laughing stock. So the point we were saying is, in the bubble, Fox News reigns. They've got their 3 million viewers. They're going to tune in forever. But outside of that, even in the D.C. press, everyone understands.
It's perhaps the biggest insult you can give a reporter is equating them to a Fox News personality or quote-unquote reporter. Eric Boehlert, senior fellow at Media Matters, thanks as always for the hard work that Media Matters does every day.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, that's Eric Boehlert from Media Matters. Check them out at MediaMatters.org. This is Take Action News, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Chris Geidner, the legal editor from BuzzFeed, about the gayest year on record. Stick around.
You're listening to We At Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Now get out there and do something.
Breast health awareness is critical for all women, particularly African Americans, because we have an increased risk of dying from breast cancer compared to women of other backgrounds. At U of M, I'm doing research here and with women in Ghana to look for an inherited link that makes African and African American women susceptible to a more aggressive type of cancer. Finding this link, I believe, will make new treatments possible. But right now, making sure that you are properly screened is our best protection.
With experts like Dr. Lisa Newman, the University of Michigan Health System is a leader in cancer care. When you call our free Cancer Answer line at 800-865-1125, an oncology nurse will answer any questions you might have about the prevention, screening, and treatment of breast cancer and other forms of cancer. All calls are confidential. Call 800-865-1125 or visit uofmhealth.org/canceranswerline.
We're working to help everyone enjoy longer, healthier lives.
That's the Michigan difference.
As a National Guard or Reserve member, you served your country. Now let VA serve you.
I wouldn't be here today as a successful woman without the help that I received.
Your VA honors your service by providing a wide range of veterans benefits. From home loans to job training, VA benefits can help with some of life's toughest challenges.
What's important about VA benefits is they don't just touch you as an individual. They can touch your parents, maybe your grandparents, your child.
Go to benefits.va.gov/Guard Reserve to learn more, including how to apply online using e-benefits.
I just finished a master's degree recently, and now I'm working on another degree as well. So the military made that all possible. My veterans benefits made that all possible.
No matter what the time is, apply for your benefits. You earn them. VA is ready to help you.
Achieve your next mission. Learn about and apply for your VA benefits today.
Hey, I'm Anderson Cooper. As a parent, you want to make sure that your child knows how to deal with bullying when they see it happening. And chances are they want to help, but they don't really know how. Well, teach them that the best thing to do is calmly walk away, find a teacher or other adult, and speak up. And do your part. Be that adult they can talk to and trust will listen. Join me to help stop bullying. Go to stopbullying.gov to find out more.
The true definition of hero. And being a hero took a heroic effort.
Every day we bring to our fans the world of sports. We speak of heroes and heroism, but there are days when sports matter little and heroes matter more. These heroes don't hit walk-off homers or buzzer-beating threes. They simply made a plan for what to do when disaster strikes. You never know when you might need to be the hero, because you never know if today is the day before a natural disaster. Prepare, plan, be a hero. Visit ready.gov.
Hey there, Matthew Filipovich here, host of the creatively titled Matthew Filipovich Show, which, by the way, you can hear every single Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. right here on 1480 a.m. We Act Radio. Now, I'm going to be honest with you people, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I like talking to smart people who are smarter than me, some of the smartest, funniest, most badass progressives out there. People like Glenn Greenwald, Naomi Klein, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, Jamie Kilstein, Allison Kilkenny, Alan Grayson, Jeremy Scahill, Jim Hightower, and more. That's right, I said more. Don't believe me? Well, tune in to the Matthew Filipovich Show every single Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. for some of the best in liberal talk, news, comedy, and interviews right here on 1480 AM We Act Radio.
Welcome back. This is Take Action News. I'm Karl Frisch. 2013 has, if anything, been the biggest gay year on record. More progress has happened for gay equality, LGBT equality, this year than any year ever recorded by history. And I can't think of anybody to spend the next two segments, this segment talking about the year that was, and next segment, our final segment of the year, discussing the year that will be with our good friend, the legal editor at BuzzFeed, our good friend Chris Geithner. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Karl. How are you?
I'm good. So, this weekend being the holiday weekend between Christmas and New Year's. Of course, last week we heard that New Mexico would be the 17th state to welcome marriage equality as the law of the land. 17 states and D.C. now representing it. What was the tally at the beginning of the year as January 2013 got started?
We've had 8 states this year that have added marriage equality to the leaderboard. We started with Rhode Island and Delaware. We've had obviously California following the Supreme Court decision to deny the appeal of the proponents of Prop 8 out in California. Right. We've had Minnesota. We've had I don't even remember.
Washington and Maine and
New Jersey. We had Maryland and Maine starting at the beginning of the year, at the end of last year. And then in this week before Christmas, we had the movement from New Mexico, which had the unique position as the only state in the country that was left that didn't have either a law for or a law against marriage equality or a ban on same-sex couples marrying, and the Supreme Court there unanimously decided that that marriage equality it would be, and that began immediately.
So this year alone,
after the elections, we've had Hawaii and Illinois, obviously, as well.
Well, and 2013 was also the 10-year anniversary mark since marriage equality arrived in its very first state, the state of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So in the 10 years leading up to this year, roughly half the states that now have marriage equality in the District of Columbia were added to the list. And in this year alone, roughly half the states with marriage equality came online.
Yeah, and I mean, I do think it's important to note. I saw there was a interesting essay from the one and only Pat Buchanan about how courts have forced same-sex marriage. They've been the forcing principle, but I do think it's important to note that of the states that have marriage equality, Massachusetts, California, Connecticut, Iowa, and now New Mexico are the only states, and New Jersey, that have had that result coming from a court. I mean, looking at this year, Hawaii, Illinois, Minnesota, Delaware, Rhode Island, they were all by the legislature.
And last year, Maine, Washington, and Maryland all came online because of voters.
Yeah, because of voters, yeah. And it's just, it's a different world than it was, and I think, I mean, I just thought as I was reading the Pat Buchanan piece that he's not living in the world that we're living in, that has been sort of evolving over the past 2 years, specifically in terms of both people and legislatures. But it's been, I mean, it was really, I mean, it was back in 2009 that the first legislatures started passing marriage equality laws. And so this is not, although it's rapidly progressing, I mean, this is not a new thing. I mean, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, and D.C. at the end of 2009 all passed marriage equality bills through their legislative body, although in Maine they had a referendum and overturned it, but then in an initiative 3 years later, the people voted the other way and voted for marriage equality.
Well, and,
so
you know...
It's rapidly evolving, but it's not an overnight thing.
Well, and to that point, you know, marriage equality in all the states that have marriage equality changed when the Supreme Court struck down key provisions in the Defense of Marriage Act.
Yeah.
Because now folks that are, you know, same-sex couples that are married in states where it's legal get all the other federal benefits that marriage comes along with.
Yeah, we've been seeing. I mean, just this past week there were developments of further implementation on Social Security from Treasury in terms of tax issues that are the fallout from the Supreme Court's June decision that Section 3 of the Defense of Marriage Act, which bans the federal government from recognizing same-sex couples' marriages, was unconstitutional. And since then, from the grand pronouncements regarding the fact that, like, for example, same-sex couples who are married now get the same immigration benefits as
they file taxes together.
Couples. Well, that they get I mean, that was one of the things that started to be seen by people as just really fundamentally unfair. I mean, you could be deported
even if you were legally married in the state that you lived in.
Yeah, exactly. And so now, I mean, you're seeing a lot of the federal government recognition actually being, regardless of even where you live, that it's just if your marriage was valid in the state that you were married in.
The National Guard and military, for example.
The federal government will recognize it. Yeah, I mean, we've seen the Secretary Hagel go through this over the past 2 or 3 months, sort of getting one by one these last states who had been saying that they weren't going to recognize same-sex couples' marriages in terms of people. I mean, this was such a small thing. This was whether or not you could get your federal military ID at a state base.
Right.
If you were the same-sex spouse of a service member. And I mean, that's what we're talking about there. This wasn't some big, like, foot in the door sort of thing. This was a literally a...
But it shows all of the little changes that have to come, and we've got a few more minutes in this segment. I want to be able to tackle a few other things. The Employment Non-Discrimination Act, people may not know, 29 states, it is still perfectly legal to fire somebody for being gay, lesbian, or bisexual. In 30 states, maybe 31 states, it's perfectly legal to fire somebody who is transgender. The U.S. Senate, including 7 Republicans, the Senate Democrats and 7 Republicans, for the first time ever passed the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. That's a pretty big deal.
I mean, I think that having the Senate pass, and for the first time in 1996, it got a vote, and it was 49-50. It failed. And then it was only sexual orientation. This time it included sexual orientation and gender identity. It is a clear marker of where things have changed. You had several Republicans on board. You had leadership from Senator Collins and Senator Kirk on the issue. And I mean, it was another example of sort of how the times are changing. I think the question, and this gets into the next segment and what's coming ahead, is what Speaker Boehner is going to do, if anything, and if he doesn't, what the White House is going to do. I mean, the president has sat on an executive order for the past 5 years that...
Well, we'll certainly get into what he might do with that in the next segment, but also... there's a variety of openly gay people elected in states across the country for the first time. Mayors in Seattle, Christine Quinn didn't fare so well in New York City, but we've got other mayors, Houston and East Park are reelected. And for the first time ever, Mark Michaud, the congressman from Maine, came out of the closet, and he's running for governor of Maine. He could be the first openly gay man elected to a governorship in this country.
Yes. He would be I mean, and his whole coming out was sort of I mean, almost literally I forget the exact wording, but was, I'm gay, let's move back to talking about what the
right.
needs.
And everybody was perfectly fine with that.
And for the most part, that's what it's been.
Absolutely fascinating. If you're just joining us, we're talking to Chris Geidner. He is the legal editor over at BuzzFeed, BuzzFeed.com. You can find his work there. So it's been a remarkably good year for LGBT folks in the United States. And in the next segment, Chris, if you'll join us, we will discuss where we will go from here. What's next when it comes to LGBT equality in 2014? This is Take Action News. I'm Karl Frisch. And when we come back, more Chris Geidner from BuzzFeed. Stick around.
For me, guns are for hunting and protecting my family. I believe in the Second Amendment, and I'll fight to protect it. But with rights come responsibilities. That's why I support comprehensive background checks, so criminals and the dangerously mentally ill can't buy guns. That protects my rights and my family.
Tell Congress, don't protect criminals. Vote to protect gun rights and our families with comprehensive background checks. Demand action now.
Hello, everybody. I'm David Shuster, your host of Take Action News. On our show, we talk government, politics, and what you can do to have an impact. We're nonpartisan, report like hell, and let the chips fall where they may. We feature segments like social media, activists of the week, and the latest news affecting our communities. So join us every Saturday and make a difference. Yes, you and I, we can do this. That's Take Action News on the air, online, and at your podcast convenience on iTunes each week on the We Act Radio Network.
Say you want to go to college.
Yay!
A Big Ten college. But you don't want to feel like part of the, well, you know. Is there an answer for you? Of course. Indiana University East.
Go Red Wolves!
Indiana University East. You'll get the quality of a Big Ten education in a small college setting. IU East offers more than 50 fields of study, from accounting to political science, taught by internationally recognized faculty with an average of 18 students per class. So it's not, student number 95A-6273, please report to. It's more like, hey, John, welcome to class. Best of all, you'll graduate with one of the most respected degrees anywhere, a degree from IU. Don't wait. Go to iue.edu or call 800-959-EAST to arrange a visit to Indiana University East. IU. Focused on you.
We Act Radio is a very proud partner of the Start at Westminster, a harm reduction, prevention, and awareness initiative sponsored by the Westminster Presbyterian Church right here in D.C. START stands for Syringe, Treatment, Advocacy, Resources, Training. These are the core elements of the harm reduction philosophy at START. The goal of this program is to reduce transmissions of HIV, hepatitis, and other bloodborne infectious diseases by empowering those at risk of infection with the tools, resources, and referrals they need to take charge of their health. Over the past year, the Start at Westminster tested over 1,600 people, and they're averaging about 150 tests each month. And of course, with the proper funding, that number could go even higher. For more information on this terrific program, go to www.startatwestminster.org. Or visit the Westminster Presbyterian Church, 400 I Street Southwest, right here in Washington, D.C.
100% success rate in modifying free consultation.
Does this sound familiar? If you're in need of assistance with your mortgage, be careful where you turn for help. Loan modification scammers will offer deals too good to be true. Learn the signs so your life won't be turned upside down. Know it, avoid it, report it. For more information or to report a scam, call 1-888-9950 or visit hud.gov/prevent-loan-scams.
Our children are exposed to violence every day, in their neighborhoods, in their schools, even in their own homes. Exposure to violence can have a devastating and lifelong impact. Through community action and leadership at the national level, we're identifying the children who need our help. I'm Attorney General Eric Holder, and I'm asking those of you who have a role in a child's life to take action. Through your attention and early intervention, we can help children in need to heal, to thrive. Together, we can change their lives and their futures.
Join the Justice Department in defending childhood.
Welcome back. Take Action News, final segment of 2013. We're joined by Chris Geidner, legal editor at BuzzFeed.com. Chris, thanks for sticking around.
Yeah.
All right, so 2014 is going to be a big year for marriage for LGBT folks as well. Let's kick it off by talking about the Olympics. I thought it was pretty ballsy that the president announced that neither he nor Mrs. Obama nor the vice president or Dr. Biden would be attending the Olympics in Sochi, Russia, but then he would be sending a delegation that included a extremely prominent lesbian athlete, Billie Jean King. Is it like the giant Oval Office middle finger to Russia?
Yeah, I mean it's really it's interesting. I mean we've got this 6 months of back and forth about what the impact of the anti-LGBT law is. Obama has spoken out against the law, and then after a couple of other presidents, the German and French presidents had announced that they were going to be skipping Sochi. The White House announces that for the first time in, I think it's like the past 7 Olympics,
right?
There's going to be nobody from this sort of top tier. The first time that they're in the past 7 Olympics that there hasn't been the president or vice president or first lady or second lady, and there's not going to be any current cabinet members even leading the delegation. It was left to Jay Carney to say, hey, look, we've got a former cabinet member who's leading the delegation in the form of Janet Napolitano. But I mean that's such an obvious ding. And then the fact that you've got Billie Jean King, the first out professional athlete in the country, and the newly officially out Brian Boitano, and you've got Ms. Cahow,
right.
I'm forgetting her first name right offhand, who was an Olympian as well, who is now a Caitlin Cahow. She's now a law student actually, but both Caitlin and Billie Jean King have talked about the LGBT laws and how they know that they're a symbol and I think that clearly as we get into February, we're gonna see them there, and that's gonna force some additional discussion and coverage of the issue, even if they weren't to say anything themselves when they're there.
Speaking of forcing the discussion, we were talking in the previous segment about the Senate passing the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. Very few people expect Speaker Boehner to bring it up for a vote anytime soon, but the president, as you referenced, has been sitting on an executive order that would grant protections from discrimination for LGBT people in federal contractors or by federal contractors. Do you think that's going to get much more momentum in the new year?
I think that the longer that we get without Speaker Boehner bringing the issue to the fore, bringing and to a vote, the more and more pressure that it's going to place on Obama. I think that there's a little bit of a window because the White House's argument has been we want to push for the legislative solution. And so pressing for the legislative solution is what they'll do. But I think that it eventually hits a point where the only response is, well, he's not moving. You have to do what you can do. And I think that advocates are going to have been willing to give the White House some time to let this end of strategy move forward, and it did get us the Senate vote, and is something that certainly Speaker Reid and Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and the White House have been focusing on pressuring Boehner on this and immigration primarily. But
well, it's certainly, I mean, one thing to consider, I guess, with an executive order is that the longer the president waits, there's potential that it could only be on the books for a short amount of time.
Well, I mean, I don't buy that argument.
You don't? I mean, like, you don't think a Republican would rescind a
non-discrimination executive order in the country's history that has been repealed by a later president?
But it's happened with governors.
Okay.
I guess I'm just so used to not getting what we want as a movement that I'm willing to believe that a Republican president would have no problem reversing something like that.
Well, I mean, George W. Bush didn't. When Bill Clinton made several changes, and I mean, he got rid of the security clearance. He got rid of, and he added sexual orientation to the federal non-discrimination policy. This would be just adding it, sexual orientation and gender identity, to the federal contract non-discrimination policy. And there's actually an argument because of the EEOC's ruling relating to gender identity, that gender identity is already covered under the current executive order. So I don't buy the argument that this would be a 2-3 year thing. It's changing. It's advancing the protections that are a part of federal employment, and if nothing else, the machinery of the bureaucracy is against moving it back.
Well, not to belabor the point, because I think there's other things to talk about as well for 2014, but marriage equality, do you think we're going to see any movement in Colorado, Nevada, Oregon in 2014? Any other places?
Well, I mean, just today there was a poll that came out. Public Policy Polling did a poll for Freedom to Marry Ohio, which is not related to the National Freedom to Marry. That continued Freedom to Marry Ohio's push to actually put an Ohio amendment to reverse its 2004 amendment on the ballot in 2014, but that faces a lot of opposition from other,
including openly LGBT state legislators, who have said that they would support it if it made the ballot, but they think it's the wrong time to do it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, Freedom to Marry, HRC, and Equality Ohio have started this other effort, Why Marriage Matters Ohio, that are definitely focused on education and are not willing to commit to a date, but are looking toward 2016.
Any other things that we should be watching for when it comes to LGBT equality in the new year?
I mean, I think when we look at the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, if Congress ever gets together and reauthorizes that, there are these different provisions, the Student Non-Discrimination Act and Safe Schools Improvement Act, that would add anti-bullying measures based on LGBT discrimination that have been an effort to be included in that bill when it's been considered. So that would certainly be something to look at. I think that watching the states, watching how the governor's race proceeds in Maine, and all of the governor's races in the state house, I think we've seen over the past couple of years the importance that the state house can play in these sort of overarching national discussions that then find a state angle that whether it's ALEC or somebody else who decides to go in through that the states become all of a sudden very important.
Alrighty, Chris Geidner, legal editor at BuzzFeed, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Alrighty, this is Take Action News. Once again, I want to thank Troy for helping out on controls in this final show of the year. Be sure to visit us online at takeactionnews.com and sign up for our podcast on iTunes. For all of us here at Take Action News, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next year.
Gary Johnson, former governor of New Mexico. Last year, my state became the 12th state to allow medical use of marijuana by patients who are seriously ill. Some people were surprised that a Republican governor supports medical marijuana, but I'm hardly alone. Groups like the American College of Physicians, American Nurses Association, and American Public Health Association have all acknowledged the medical value of marijuana. New research about medical marijuana is coming out almost every day, showing remarkable potential in all sorts of serious conditions, including cancer, AIDS, and chronic pain. But some in government still want to put politics and ideology ahead of public health. To learn more about medical marijuana and what you can do to help, contact the Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or visit them on the web at mpp.org. Thanks.
You're listening to We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM. Now get out there and do something.